Good to go.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Happy February 1st. Welcome to another edition of Manhattan Community Board 4's full board meeting on the squares this evening. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and it's a privilege to be calling this meeting to order as chair. Tonight's meeting is being held via Zoom as the mayor has again extended the executive order to allow for public meetings to be held virtually through February 21st, 2023. Stay tuned for details and information of that as we track the mayor's executive orders on the topic. Our meeting, as always, is being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and a transcript is also being recorded, and requests for these are accessible by the public after the meeting. As is our custom, we'll have a public session this evening when members of the public will be given the ability to speak during the public session. We also have two presentations and hearings this evening, and our agenda can be found on our website at mcb4.nyc. I know, let's see. First hearing and order of business, I'm going to pass it over to our budget task force chair and second vice chair, Leslie Bogosian-Murphy, to open up the hearing and talk about the budget proposal.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and hello, everybody. So this first hearing is the public hearing on the mayor's preliminary budget, and our response letter. This was released in February, and this is for the fiscal year 2024, which begins July 1st. So just to let everyone know in the public, we have examined it as a community board through our budget task force, which Jeffrey just mentioned, compiling and prioritizing asks from each committee. And we have written our budget response letter. This will be presented later in the evening in further detail and for board discussion. For a shorthanded explanation, over the year, the committees and the full board advocate for, review, comment on projects and proposals in our district. And then we have the opportunity to request funding for those items in what's called our statement of district needs. So this lists the asks in priority, and then it goes to the city and the relevant agencies. The city responds to our requests through the yearly budget and this document, which will be voted on tonight. So this is the response to their response. So at this time, I guess I would like to formally invite the public to comment on the mayor's $102.7 billion budget proposal for the city and our community board's district response. And from what I understand, unless there's someone who raised their hand, Jesse, I don't think anyone signed up tonight for this.
No one signed up for this hearing. That's correct.
Okay, and is there anyone in the waiting room or no?
Anybody member from the public would like to speak on this topic? They can raise their hand. I'm happy to bring them over.
I don't see anyone.
I don't see anyone either.
Okay. So Chair, you'll be very happy that I guess this public hearing comes to a close.
Oh, wait, I see a hand raised. Tony?
Alice, it's Tony Simone, the assembly member. So
okay.
He'll be brought over when we do the elected officials section. Thanks for flagging that.
So I guess we can close this public hearing on this topic.
Perfect. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
And with that, we move to the next, which is another public hearing on item 25 on our agenda, which is the Manhattan Community Board 4 comments to the Office of Cannabis Management. You'll recall earlier this year, we established basically a adult cannabis consumption working group of the board, which over the past, year, I think now, actually almost a year, Jesse, 6 months, has been meeting to form recommendations and guidelines for how cannabis businesses should operate. This is I'm going to pass it over to Jesse Greenwald just very briefly because this is meant to be a hearing on this topic, though again, I don't believe we have anybody signed up to speak. So Jesse, if you just want to lay out, don't go through all the details in the letter, we'll do that later, but just the general topic beyond what I sort of shared.
Sure. So we have drafted as a working group a letter to the Office of Cannabis Management on their proposed regulations for adult use retail dispensaries and on-site consumption lounges. So this letter is part of the notice and comment period of any regulation that is passed by the New York State. We're given 60 days to comment. And so our comments are generally regarding the community board's role in the siting of these dispensaries or on-site consumption lounges and the appropriate notice that we should receive and a few more details in there. But that's the general gist of the letter, that they finally, after 2 years, promulgated these regulations, which we are very excited to finally comment on.
Thank you for that. We didn't have any advanced signups. Is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on this topic?
One person just raised their hand. Oh, nope, and put it back
And then
down.
it's gone.
Oh, no.
Okay. Jesse and the working group, thank you all for this. And we'll stay tuned for greater discussion on this later in the meeting. Thank you. Moving right along, Jessica Chait, our first vice chair, over to you for the public session.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. We have a number of people who have signed up. We're moving very quickly this evening, so if you have not signed up but plan to speak, we'll ask that you raise your hand. If you're an elected official, you'll have still time to speak after this session. Everyone is asked to keep their remarks to 2 minutes, and I just want to note that there are some changes to the agenda, including some items which have been tabled or referred back to committee, which are not going to be on tonight's topic, or tonight's agenda. So if you were planning to speak on one of those, you're welcome to speak, of course, but you may want to save your remarks for a future meeting. With that, I'm gonna ask if Jacqueline or Elka, do you want to speak tonight? They had signed up previously.
I don't believe Elka's here.
Okay. And Jacqueline, I'm also not seeing.
No, I'm not seeing Jacqueline either. I'm not seeing Katie either.
Okay, so we'll go to John Contreras from Chelsea Recreation Center, and we can bring him over.
And I'm assuming
And Lisa,
with late wagers.
Lisa, you haven't signed up, but we're happy to offer you your time slot if you're so interested. And Jesse, if you can go ahead and bring her over just in case.
Yep.
Great.
I brought John over. I think he should be coming over.
Great. John, if you want to go ahead and unmute. And once you say hello, your 2 minutes will begin.
Good evening. My name is John Contreras. I am the Deputy Center Manager for Chelsea Recreation Center. We're located at 430 West 25th Street here in New York. And we're just here to promote we have an event coming up February 10th. It's a paint night event. It's free to the community. You can show up, you can go on the park's website and sign up for it if you like. It'll be one of our instructors will be doing a paint night, and everyone will be invited to come and follow the instructor and paint a cute little Valentine's Day paint. It's great for the family, kids, so hopefully everyone will come. And also we have some wonderful youth programming here. We have youth soccer, floor hockey, and lacrosse. So membership is free for anyone 24 and under. So we welcome everyone to bring their kids and have some fun over here at Chelsea. Thank you.
Jessica, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, John. Lisa, it seems we have you. Am I putting you on the spot, or do you have?
No, and I not only signed up, I got a registration notice. So
Oh man,
yeah.
we're so happy to have you. Please, your 2 minutes.
I might need an extra 10 seconds. I'm reading as fast as I can, okay? So my name is Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY College on 27th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues, with the 1,000-person residence hall on 31st Street west of 9th, which is in the CB4 district. We've got a wonderful new exhibition opening at the museum at FIT on Tuesday, February 7th, in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the birth of hip hop. It's called Fresh, Fly, and Fabulous: 50 Years of Hip Hop Style. This will be the largest and most comprehensive exhibition to explore this revolutionary and influential style. Over 100 garments and accessories capture the pivotal moments in hip hop's fashion evolution ranging from Kangol hats to Dapper Dan jackets and the Monoloblahnic Oka Alta booties inspired by the Timberland work boots, which I'm sure Jeffrey has a pair of. Visitors will see looks worn and made popular by artists like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, LL Cool J, whose daughter is an FIT grad, and she's a very talented fashion designer, Chuck D, Missy Elliott, Aaliyah, DJ Khaled, and Cardi B, as well as from Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Versace. The exhibition begins with an examination of the early club venues where hip-hop styles were showcased in the media, record companies, TV, and films that utilized fashion as a vehicle to promote hip-hop artists and ideas. Sections such as Designer Dreams and High Fashion Does Hip-Hop explore the genre's evolving relationship with established designer brands and how custom designers like Dapper Dan and 5001 Flavors made unique hip-hop style for their clients. Other sections look at the specific ways hip-hop has influenced fashion categories, including denim, outerwear, and formal wear. And the exhibition concludes with a celebrity style section that examines the personal and stage style of trendsetting artists, and a hip-hop glam section that illustrates the worldwide impact of hip-hop artists as red carpet fashion icons in the 21st century. You can get a taste of this exhibition this weekend if you get up early enough to watch CBS 60's Sunday morning show, which starts at 9. There's a piece on the show, and there's also a related symposium on campus that's open to the public on Friday, February 24th. This show is truly fresh, fab, and fabulous, and we hope you'll visit. Because remember, the museum at FIT is the only museum in New York City entirely devoted to fashion, and it's free and open to the public from Wednesday through Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We have no other folks who have signed up, and as we noted, the hand raised is for our next session. So I believe, Chair, that closes our public session.
Thank you, Jessica. And just a note on the hip hop factor, obviously FIT leading the way before the Bronx eventually opens its permanent home to the history of hip hop. So thank you for that.
Education always leads.
Moving right along this evening, folks, I would like to call, for an adoption of the agenda as amended. Are there any questions on the amended agenda? Like Jessica mentioned, a number of items have been tabled, withdrawn, or referred back to committee. I'll take a motion to adopt, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Abstentions? Present not eligible? Great. The agenda is adopted as amended. Minutes from the January meeting. Are there any questions on the minutes from the January meeting? With no questions, I'll take a motion to adopt the minutes, please.
Motion to adopt.
Christine, that was a motion. Is there a second?
Second then.
Thanks, Leslie. Any objections? Abstention? Present not eligible? Great, the minutes are adopted. Next up is reports from our elected officials. Our borough president will be joining us a bit later this evening. So I want to first welcome in his formal and official capacity, our new representative in the State Assembly, Assemblymember Tony Simone, for a report, please.
He's coming over now.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. How's everyone doing? My husband's cooking, so excuse the noise. Good evening, Community Board 4. Thank you for all the work you do. I know most of you know me, but if you don't know me, I'm Tony Simone. I'm the new Assembly member of the 5th District, which, as you all probably know, includes all of Chelsea and considering all the issues and challenges we face. I know that Community Board 4 has always been a leader on affordable housing. I was proud to stand with all of you when you announced your affordable housing plan. It's time that we become builders and creators of housing, not just for low income, but for the middle class working folks so they can live and work in our district. I know today the governor unveiled her budget. She made a big deal about housing to increase the supply of housing, but I also want to make sure we ensure that the tenants that already live here are protected. why I'm also fighting for good cause eviction and other measures to ensure that tenants are protected in Community Board 4, which I know Community Board 4 has been working on for decades. I also know that Community Board has been a leader on Penn Station. As many of us agree, the current plan is unacceptable. It is a development plan, and I'm fighting for it to be an infrastructure transportation plan. I've already spoken to some of the governor's staff. Now the current plan is too reliant on private development and one commercial developer. And we're looking at creative ways to push the governor and others to change the current. Because in the end, we want a great Penn Station, but we don't need 10 office towers by Penn Station. We have a lot of work to do on that. And I know working with Senator Kruger, Councilmember Eric Botcher, Senator Hoylman, and Representative Nadler, we've recently met on other legislative ways to ensure that there is a great transportation plan coming up. And I know we've all heard the possibility of a casino coming to our district. I am philosophically opposed to casino in Manhattan. So I'm viewing all of the plans with skepticism. I can never say that word, skepticism. So we feel like it's an uphill battle for casino. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the plans, the future plans, to see specifically Community Board 4 has to say about these upcoming plans. And I know, as Brad Holman has been quoted in the press, it will be an uphill battle for any casino to be cited. And anything that comes before us must have full community input from the Community Board and from the community at large. We all know public safety has been a major challenge for our entire district and beyond our state. We recently met about the 8th report. I know it's been a problem increasing every day, from Hell's Kitchen to Chelsea, meeting with the NYPD and the DA's office and others. We're trying to have all possible resources where it comes to funding, working together in a coordinated way to meet the public safety problems that we have, which aren't new, but are definitely have been pretty bad on 8th Avenue. As many know, my community office is running. I am fortunate to have some from my predecessor, me, Matt Ty, as many of you know, is my chief of staff. Ben Lowenstein is my community liaison to Board 4 and 7. We also have Yadir Jimenez, who's a member of Community Board 4 as a constituent liaison for our office. I want to leave off the last things. I know you have a long meeting to meet. The legislation already has begun. I'm proud that I've co-sponsored already a number of bills to take on climate change and the climate crisis. Also, to ensure that we have renewable energy. In addition to that, I've joined other Assembly members to ensure that reproductive health is protected in New York, and that we have access for all from around the nation to come to New York if folks seeking reproductive freedom and health. Other bills I've supported include, in my first 2 weeks, ensuring that folks with developmental disabilities efficient ways of applying for benefits, and also propose legislation with other members to ensure the MTA will close their budget deficit. I'm opposed to any fare hikes, which I've let the governor's office know. I'll be sending you community updates on a regular basis and actions coming up. And please don't hesitate to reach out to our office on any district-wide matters or any individual matters. My office is up and running. And lastly, I hope you all can join me and hopefully some fun entertainers. The community celebration inauguration will be on Saturday, March 4th. Doors open at 2 o'clock and the program will start at 2:30. We'll send out numerous reminders, I'm sure, and on social media. Thank you for all your work you do.
Thank you, Assemblymember. If you have a second for a question, Christine?
Sure.
Yes. Assemblymember, bravo. Very
Thank
happy to have you on board. You mentioned 8th Avenue, and I happen to live really close by. And, you know, it is a very difficult area, but NYPD has chosen to manage this area by installing a very large truck on the sidewalk. And that truck is not manned. There is nobody in that truck. So what we want is really people walking the block and going back and forth. And we want then NYPD to remove this ridiculous truck, which is completely in the middle of the sidewalk.
Christine, 8th Avenue and where?
This is between 38 and 39. And they have also installed those big towers, and they're again on the sidewalk. And you know, I think it really pushes everybody to pack against the on one side of the sidewalk, which is narrow. And you know, if it's not, I mean, we really want to have people there, people walking up and down, not an empty truck.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. I know in the past we have asked for the light thing in the truck just to give the perception the police are there, but they shouldn't be on the sidewalk or blocking the bike lane. So I'll talk to Ben in our office and the precinct to see if we can have it moved.
Yeah, but the perception is not good enough. You know, it's like, why don't we have two people walking up and down the avenue for 2 or 3 or 4 blocks? That's really, you know, community policing. And if there is something going on, they will catch it. But I would appreciate the help on that.
Sure. Thank you for letting me know.
Thanks, Christine. Assembly member, thank you for joining us for your first official time. And I have no doubt we'll be seeing you again very soon.
See you all soon. I'll be on for a little bit. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Up next, I want to welcome Olivia Gren-Raynor from Congressman Jerry Nadler's office. Olivia?
Thank you, and happy February 1st, everyone. I will be very quick. Honestly, a lot of just transitioning into our new district, helping our new elected officials that are representing the old parts of the district that we lost, and learning a lot about our new district. But one of the things I did want to highlight that we kind of closed out from our old district was getting uterine cancer listed for the World Trade Center Health Program. So we're really proud of that. In DC this week, you know, as ranking member now, not chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Nadler has been working on just constituting the committee. And so that just includes naming, you know, different Congress members to the committee and then assigning them to the appropriate subcommittees. And I'm sure you've seen kind of a lot of the drama in the news about what's going on there, especially with Republican control. And then citywide, more in the district, we wrote a letter to New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission about the placement of these 5G towers, which are going to be these like 35 foot structures for, you know, more cellular access throughout certain neighborhoods in the district, especially historic districts. We're a little bit concerned about that. And we're going to work on a letter that's either borough-wide or actually citywide with the rest of our delegation going to the FCC about that. But I will probably be able to talk more about that in March. And then just generally, as I said, you know, Democrats are now in the minority in the House, but Congressman Nadler using his voice to stand up against the Republican overreach that we're seeing, you know, actively advocating against Republican attempts to, you know, cut Social Security and Medicare, and then their crusade, obviously, to pass a national abortion ban. So it's kind of a little bit of an update of what we've been up to in the first few weeks of this session, and I'm happy to take questions if people have them.
Thanks, Olivia. Appreciate it. I'll go first. Was the congressman present yesterday for the Gateway announcement?
He was not, because he had to be there when they started the Judiciary Committee this session.
All right,
so
that
he
is
missed it, but he's very happy.
That is the only acceptable excuse given.
I know, he was like, this is the day they picked, but I have to be in the Judiciary Committee because I cannot let the new chair do whatever he wants. You know
of
what
course, we respect that. So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. Dale, you're up first.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah, and I'm so glad that the Gateway project is moving forward finally, and appreciate Congressman Nadler's advocacy for it. My question is quick because the redistricting process was chaotic in a lot of ways. Could you briefly describe Congressman Nadler's new district, the parameters?
Yes. The easiest way that I always describe it is we go 14th Street river to river, all the way up to 96th Street river to river. And then the only caveats there, we have Roosevelt Island in our district as well. And then on the far west side, on like Riverside Drive, we go up to around 113th Street. But 14th to 96th 6th Street, kind of that central part of Manhattan is the easiest way to think about it.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Sabrina?
Hi, Olivia. Thank you. I have a question. It's actually sort of complicated because it's an immigration. Yeah, it's an immigration, and immigration has tons of layers. But I think I'm trying to be as direct as possible. I'm concerned about the waiting list on the process on the recent asylum seekers that we have in the city, and especially the work permit aspect. I disclosed myself many times. I myself am an asylum seeker, and I myself been waiting for the renew of my work permit for a year. That hasn't come. So to just give you so I wonder what our congressperson is doing in terms of advocating for. We all know that immigration reform is very complicated and has a lot of layers and needs, all the yada things that need to happen. But we do have a problem that most of these people cannot work because they're not authorized to work. So I just wonder if there are ways that we can mitigate into this. Either, TPS might be a solution that takes time. But I just want to know what's happening to advocate for these people.
Yes, I completely agree with everything that you said. And one of the things, going back to our new district that has been, more eye-opening is we do now represent the East Side, where a lot of asylum seekers are being taken. And so this is becoming more of an important issue in our district. Not that it wasn't before, but, just more at the top of our mind. I will say that next week is our legislative priorities conference, where we all meet to talk about what the congressman, wants to focus on in the next Congress. And of course, immigration reform is going to be more of a hurdle now that the Republicans are in control. But I will talk to our immigration specialist about this, and I will send you an email. But that is completely noted. And I will just add that our immigration specialists do a weekly call with the mayor's office to discuss the asylum seekers situation and to continue to advocate for that. But I will get back to you after our retreat, because I do want to have an answer for you on, what things we can get done in the next 2 years,
For the work permits,
Yes, for the work permits, but being transparent, unfortunately, we
what
don't
options
have
do we have?
control. Exactly. But thank you so much, and I will get back to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Olivia, you're in the hot seat this evening, so I'm going to keep you on it.
Goodness.
You're up
Okay.
next.
Actually, Sabrina just asked my question. I was going to ask something similar.
Okay, I will
Thank you,
write
Olivia.
down that you also want an answer for that, so I can make sure to get back to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, getting back to Jesse would probably be best, and then
Okay, I can do that.
Jesse Bodine. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. James, you have the final question for Olivia.
Yeah, first, big thank you. Jerry Nadler has been such an amazing advocate, and we really appreciate all the work. My wife and I have been going through fertility challenges, and I know it's a challenge for a lot of small businesses, something that I'm not sure, might get lost in the dialogue. Obviously, women's rights and rights to reproduce are central and important. One challenge that people may not be aware of is that they're not covered by insurance. So the only people who have access are the people with the financial means. And we have, a business that's doing well, it's quite a burden. So I'm just wondering, is that something that's on the radar, and if there's something that can be done legislatively to address this?
I have completely taken note of that. And so you're talking specifically about employees of small businesses for fertility treatments.
Exactly.
Okay, I have noted that. If I'm going to be honest, we've never had a constituent ask us about that specific question. We get a lot of questions regarding reproductive health, but I will get an answer for you and then go through Jesse to get back to you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, the final question now. Brad.
This is my month.
It is.
Yes, we asked Senator Schumer when he was here last, so much money was put toward COVID and COVID treatment and the vaccines and how fast that was rolled out. But we put to him, can this now and that effort be towards going after cancer. I think it shows that we can conquer a lot of things are opened up and that funding goes. And I don't think we should lose that framework of trying to push things through. So I'd like to put that back out there.
All right, completely noted. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Brad. Olivia, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see if the seat stays hot for you next time you're here.
Yes, I'll be back in March.
Great. Next up, I want to go to Robin Frost from the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, who's here to provide an update this evening on the Watson Hotel. Robin, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. This is my first Board 4 meeting, and I'm happy to be here. I was at the District Service Cabinet last month. So I have been with the Mayor's office since right after the first of the year. And I know one of the biggest issues in the district is the Watson Hotel situation, which I think is slowly getting resolved. I learned today that there are currently about 600 people who have relocated to the cruise terminal in Red Hook. There are still a couple of hundred people yet to be resolved, some in the hotel. The Health and Hospitals group is working very closely with them to relocate. People are hooking up with friends, connecting with family, and the city has been very diligent about providing transportation or tickets, airplane tickets for people to leave New York and get with relatives. There's been a lot of discussion and concern about the cruise terminal and the facilities. There's been a lot in the press, a lot on Twitter, and I can tell you a few things about it if that is of interest, which is there was a question about the number of bathroom facilities and shower facilities and heat. And I'm told by a few people who were there, in fact, I understand that Councilmember Botcher was there today, that it's so hot that people are wanting to wear shorts. See what happens in 2 days when it goes down to 6 degrees. But anyway, the bathrooms, there's a bathroom for every 15 people, which is a standard that's used in the city. There are plenty of showers. What I learned and was pleased to learn, frankly, is that ferry service is provided at no cost, and the ferry is literally next to the ship, the cruise terminal. And also there are buses being run every hour from 6 in the morning to 10 at night to the Barclays Center, so people can access subway as well. As I think you all know, this facility has been earmarked for families with children, and we are anxious to get that population in. We expect that it will happen in the pretty near term. From where we were on Monday, we've made a lot of progress, and progress will continue to be made. I just want to note that despite a lot of the press coverage, nothing has been confiscated from any of the asylees. There have been no arrests. The tents have been taken down. People take their own tents. And of course, there are some people who are less happy about that, but I think it's moving in the right direction. And while I can't give you a date that this will be resolved, I think we're a whole lot closer now than we were 2 days ago. Jesse reached out to me early Monday morning, and I know he's been working with the various city agencies on this and keeping on top of the situation. And I will continue to communicate with you through Jesse on anything that we learn. So that's what I have. There were 1,000 men, and 600 of them now are are gone. So, and 100 went today. So it's moving.
First of all, thank you for joining us this evening. I actually think in the history of my time on the board, this is one of the first times that somebody has come from the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. So a very formal and public thanks from us to you for being here this evening with us to share that.
I'm thrilled to have that distinction. So thank you.
Good. Just to understand a bit more, the families that are being moved to the Watson, they are also asylum seekers, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Families with children.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a HERC, you know, that. So there's a full service health, school, all the social services that, and we're anxious, frankly, to get the families in there. You know, different needs, not that the single men don't have needs, but,
Sure.
you know, families are, you know, in a different category, and we want to be sure to take care of the families and personally, especially the children. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. If it's okay, there's a couple of questions from board members.
I'm happy
Yadira?
to.
Hi, good evening. I have a question. Is this a permanent living situation for these gentlemen? If not, what is there a time frame? I'm concerned about these people sleeping on cots and sleeping head to foot of another long term.
I can't tell you the answer to that. I don't think the expectation or desire is that this be a permanent situation. I think people that are asylees really don't want to stay in that status for very long either. And many of the people are working, you know, they've gotten jobs. And I think the goal for most people is to be financially self-sufficient, living in their own space with family or friends. So I don't have a specific what is going to happen in 6 months or 12 months, but I will check and be sure to get back on that next year. I think for most people who've come here, you know, they want to start their lives. They want to restart their lives in a different home. And I don't think being, you know, at a cruise terminal really creates that environment. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think the long term, and I appreciate your comment about the cots. I did find out because when I saw the picture, I saw lots and lots of cots. And I thought, where do people leave their things? And apparently, in most facilities, people, the asylees, get one locker, but in this, they have 2 lockers. So for most of them, they're able to have their belongings locked up and accessible to them. I think that's, you know, something important, you know, as you're trying to build your life, to have your things around you. So.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey, just one last follow-up.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I guess I am concerned about how long these people are going to be sleeping in this situation.
Yeah.
And from my experience speaking to different asylum seekers that I, you know, have met, it is almost impossible for them to get working papers and to move on with their life, but they're not in these situations. So what is the mayor's office doing to offer these people, you know, a head start or, you know, working papers?
I mean, unfortunately, the decision about somebody's work status is not a city in the city's jurisdiction. I think that Olivia has left, but she would probably be in a better position to address that specific issue about work permits. I mean, people get work. I'm not saying they have permits, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have them, but it's not really up to the city. The city doesn't have the power to do that.
Thanks, Yadira. Maria?
I get this. Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. Robin, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was, there's been lots of conversations about what's been happening on 57th Street. So
I know. Astounding.
It's going to remain a HERC when the families are there.
Yes, absolutely.
And is it going to be the same staff members that I met when I went on tour there?
That I can't tell you. I see no reason why it wouldn't be, but I don't know. The cruise terminal is also a HERC.
Okay. And I have just like two more questions. Whether or not you can answer, I don't know. But so there were 1,000, a little bit, I believe over 1,000 men there. So I'm kind of curious, is it going to be 1,000 individuals there, children and parents?
I don't know, but I think the intention is to fill the hotel with families.
Well, I would believe so. Yeah.
And, you know, families have 2 children or 4 children, you know, I'm sure there's not a quota on that. So I don't know how many rooms are in the hotel, but I think it houses or can accommodate roughly 1,000 or slightly more than 1,000 people.
Yeah, it is slightly more. Also, does your office collaborate at all with like DOE or what am I looking for? I'm thinking about children that are school age, and I'm thinking about children that could be in daycare. And does your office collaborate at all with those? Yeah.
Not directly, but if there's an issue, we certainly can step in. I think DOE has been, from what I hear, is playing a very active role in getting children into schools. And daycare.
They're inundated, obviously, as you know,
and it's huge.
Would be
I mean,
obvious.
certain schools have huge populations of asylees, and I think in a way it's good because, you know, you feel maybe more comfortable. But
I agree.
if there's a specific issue, please bring it to my attention. But I think the wheels are in motion, and the coordinating agency at the HERCs is H&H. And they have, you know, the city's resources accessible to them and to the asylees. So
one more question was just about
here anything that seems to be awry.
Okay. And Robin, vaccinations for the children so that they can actually enter school. Since it's a HERC, will that be done on site?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Receive, there's health care there. I mean, it is health and hospitals run, so you know,
I expected
to be like pretty high on the list.
Okay, I apologize. I keep interrupting you. Thank you. Yes.
No, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Maria. Just so folks know, we are inviting HHC, the Health and Hospitals Corporation, to our next Housing, Health and Human Services Committee meeting in February. So many sort of detailed questions just on the ongoing operations and the management of it can be addressed there as well. And of course, anything new that comes along the way as well. I also just want to note for the record in advance that from the get-go of HHC taking over this facility, we continue to be pleased with the management structure and the treatment of both the community, those who are establishing new community there and those who have been in the community for a while. And we would hope that frankly, DHS takes better note from how HHC manages their facilities. And Robin, you feel free to send that,
back.
Take that back. Katie, you're next.
In fact, just one little point. People, if they decide to leave the HERC, you know, they have the option, if they don't want to go to Brooklyn, to go to a DHS facility. Just not saying they would, but you know, that isn't available.
And, you know, we have concerns with the ripple effect of how that would play out, because frankly, there's quite a few DHS facilities in our district that are not as well managed as the Watson, and the managing partner is often of significant concern to us. So that was another, you know, factor in how this has played out.
That's right. And you're not the only community board, you know, expressing that frustration and difficulty. I think it's being heard.
Katie?
Great, thanks. Thank you, Robin, for being here this evening. One of the letters that we will be discussing this evening as a board addresses children who live in our district who are children of asylum seekers and who are, recently arrived and are being assigned by the DOE reps who are doing such a great job of making sure the kids are getting into school. But one of the issues that was identified to us is that the DOE prioritizes assigning these children to schools that have dual language programs. But those schools with dual language programs tend to be far away. So many of the students are being bused. And so there are issues about busing, but specifically because kids are being bused to their schools, then they can't stay for after school programs or language support programs or any tutoring.
The buses don't run.
Because they have to catch their bus and they have to get back home again. And that's actually really proving to be a problem. And so our letter this evening is talking about requesting that there be actually on site at the shelter after school programs and tutoring and English language support programs. And so I guess I was just wondering, I understand that this is all quite, the details are getting worked out right now and maybe you don't know, but is that something that is being discussed at the HERC? Because we've certainly seen there's a great need.
It may be. I don't know the answer to that. It sounds like it's a very logical thing to do if that's available, or even if there's a nearby program that would make sense. And I don't know that, but I think that H&H is really doing an incredible job with, the places they are running. And I think that it really is the residents who are coming first. But I think you raise a very good point, and that the kids are taken to the dual language school, but then can't avail themselves of some of the other benefits of being in that kind of environment. I'll take that back to my office. The letter that you're writing is going to go to whom?
I'll have to double check, but I believe we've also added the mayor's office, but that we were addressing it to the DOE and DHS because it's about sort of what's happening at the shelters.
Okay. Feel free to copy our office, and Jesse, you can always send it to me, but I can give you the commissioner's contact information as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Katie. Sabrina?
Hello. So I have a question. You mentioned that they're going to be families. Are these new families coming in, or they're already in the city?
I don't know the answer to that, but my guess would be that they're probably already here.
Okay, so they're being transferred from another shelter.
Don't quote me, and I will find out.
Okay.
I think the idea is to provide, centralized services to families, and it'd be good for families to be with families and children to be with children. So, I'm hopeful that is part of the thinking that went into this. But I don't know if they're already here or anticipated to arrive. My understanding is that they're ready to move the families in.
So they're probably here.
So I'm guessing they're here. Maybe there some here and some about to come. But that would be my guess. But it's just my guess, and I can find that out.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Joe?
Yes, Robin, I'm the co-chair of Housing, Health, Human Services of Maria. And we have been through the Watson, and I will tell you, it's very rare that our board comes back, representatives from our board come back to a meeting and say, this is the best run shelter we've ever been through. And it was incredibly put together. So I want you to hear that from a city agency that has an incredible number of shelters and shelter beds and a wide range of ability to manage and ability not to manage, right? However, I want to say this is a real self-inflicted wound, because having been to the Watson, seeing how well it's been run, the idea that the individuals would be transferred is good. This was so predictable to happen, because to leave that well-run facility to go to a big open ship terminal is just, it makes no sense. It could have been avoided. So I just ask that as we go forward with things like this, please think about what happens. There's human beings involved in this. And we have more than our overwhelming fair share of shelters, asylees we're dealing with, and we're trying to do our best. The problem is that I want to bring to your attention, there is not enough program space in the Watson for a family program. We did a full tour of that building. There's one large ballroom that was being used partially for health and hospitals to do vaccinations, things like that. But now when you have, the population is going to get larger. It's 600 rooms, a capacity of about 1,100 people, because people are sharing rooms. If we're talking about 2 or 3 kids in a room or other relatives, you start to create a huge problem. We solved the smoking issue by creating an area outside along the driveway. There's no outdoor space. So we want to make sure, because this is, we express to health and hospitals, the moment people start hanging out because they have no other ability to be outside in front of the building and or smoking. But if you now push the population up, Jeffrey mentioned in our 2 meetings ago, we got bike corrals installed, for example, because people are getting delivering your messenger job. That made a huge difference, right? But now let's not go back in time to say a bunch of children on the street with no place to go. And I think what you just mentioned, seeking program space elsewhere adjacent in the district will be key to success here. Otherwise, we're in deep, deep crisis once the weather gets nice. And there's lots of children who have no place to go. So please, if you can look into that and get back to Jesse on it, we can work with you in partnership to figure out what might be available where in a public facility, but it's going to cause you the next bad story in the Times and the News and the Post. So we'd like to avoid that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your compliment of how they're being run. And I actually attended a meeting last night where H&H did a presentation about the Watson and just, you know, generally. And I don't impress easily, but I was so impressed. And I think they're doing a great job. And they seem open, you know, it's not bureaucratic.
We talked to them, they heard, they made changes. While we were there, they made changes, but just again, this could turn south so quickly.
Oh, I hear you.
You now have 80 or 90 kids with nowhere to go.
Right.
So.
And as the weather gets nicer,
Right.
they want to be outside more, and as they get familiar. So no, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your comments, and I will get back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. To Leslie with the final question, please.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Robin, when I saw you were from the mayor's office, like Jeffrey, I was so happy. And I want to echo his appreciation as our appreciation that you came to us. One comment, then I just have a question, is when all this news is happening about the Watson, I'm glad we're talking about the families that are moving in with children, because I think that was underreported. I think the overwhelming reports are like that the city is kicking out these men, but it wasn't earmarked. No one knew what was going in there. And I think it's important that it was earmarked for families with children, this particular shelter. I'm sure it could have been done better, but I'm glad now we're talking about that. To follow up on the children point of it, the DOE aspect. So this is going to be, we're here in I guess wave 3 or 4 or 5 of children coming into our district and then going into our schools. And I'll just be specific to elementary and middle schools. But what's happening, and you know this because I know the mayor talked about it, is that we are in a huge shortage of bilingual educators. So coincidentally, it was one of our major budget requests from this district that unfortunately was denied. And coincidentally, we're talking about that budget request response tonight. But what we're finding, especially in the elementary schools, because there are no bilingual educators or not enough, that a lot of the attention is, it's either one or the other. The kids are being ignored, or a lot of the attention is going to those native Spanish speaking children, and the other general population is not kind of up to speed on the general studies. So I just wanted to ask if you guys are aware of it, if you're making efforts for bilingual educators, or at least bilingual, some sort of tools to go into these schools so the kids aren't just sitting there and twiddling their thumbs, for months on end. Thank you.
I don't know the answer, and I will reach out to DOE and H&H to see how they're handling that, at the various HERC facilities. I think it's a very good point. And while children usually can pick up language easily and quickly compared to us, it's important that there's a comfort level that they can communicate. So I hear you, and I will see what I can find out.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a note because that's what the educators were telling us as far as needs that they saw in the school. So thank you.
Okay, great. Any specific schools that you're thinking of?
We can definitely, yes, PS 111, definitely.
Right.
I think PS 33, I want to say, but we can definitely get you a
That would be
comprehensive list because I know they're moving in and out. So I know they were at PS 111. Eric Botcher, our council member, is on the line. He might know a little better on kind of like the movements, because I know they were moving in and out. So I'm not sure where the waves are going. But yes, we could definitely get you a comprehensive elementary school list.
Great.
Thank
And
you,
Eric,
Robin.
nice to see you.
Thank you, Robin. And Leslie, thank you for that point. Robin, thank you again very much for coming tonight. Like I said, we'll be hearing from HHC specifically about the Watson and getting updates at a committee meeting later in February, but we really appreciate you
They've
being here
indicated they
tonight.
may not be coming, Jeffrey.
Well, as of right now, we've extended the invitation. So that's what I'm speaking to, that we have an anticipation of HHC attending our committee meeting. So we really appreciate you being here, and please do extend our thanks, appreciation, but also our list of concerns to your colleagues in the various agencies. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. And I will get back to you with answers and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you. Up next, everybody, Councilmember Eric Botcher. Councilmember, over to you.
Hi, Jeffrey. Hey, everyone. Great to see you. Let's start talking about the Watson and the Brooklyn cruise ship terminal. I went there today with Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso and my colleagues in Brooklyn, also Shahana Hanif, the chair of the Immigration Committee. And it is indeed a very, very different model than the Watson. It's a pretty vast departure from the Watson. So I don't at all blame anyone for not wanting to make that change. That having been said, I also am continue to be impressed with the efficiency and professionalism at which the health and hospitals folks run their facilities. And, I think to Joe's point, maybe it's because we're so used to the DHS facilities. It's just such a contrast to how well run they are. I will say though that they are head to toe in very like airplane hangar size rooms. And my colleagues and I, during our tour, made a lot of suggestions for things that could be made better. We really would like to see some kind of privacy put up between the bunks, the cots. It's a problem though, because the fire department says that's not a safe thing to do, be creating like a maze of sorts. But we talked about the food, the transportation, the bathroom situation, the shower situation, lots of things that could be made better. But here's the thing, this is only a 12-week site. This HERC is only a 12-week site because that's going to be a cruise terminal again when cruise season starts again. And we've got a big problem on our hands here as a city because there are not a multitude of places for these kind of facilities to go. And I'm really hoping that my colleagues and I, we can rally together and help the city figure this out and come up with some better solutions. The immigration commissioner had a very sobering assessment of how many more people are going to be coming over the next year. And we could be we're already in a very difficult situation, but it could be much, much worse a year from now. The other thing to note about a HERC is that it is not supposed to be a long-term lodging. It is ideally a humanitarian emergency relief center, a place for people to come, get stabilized, get connected with services, and get connected with the next point on their journey. That having been said, for people who don't have that ability or nowhere to go or nowhere elsewhere on their journey to go, they're not telling folks they can't stay, but a very big percentage of people are staying. So I am, in addition to, trying to get through this short-term situation with the Watson and making sure that all the men there are well cared for and that the families are able to transition in. We really, as a city, need to come up with a way through this. And the governor today pledged is proposing $1 billion in the budget, which would be a huge help for New York City, obviously. Now, the federal government needs to do something. They have not done much of anything to help New York City, and we're really going to need them badly. At the local level, our schools have absorbed many of these students. It's every elementary school in our district has taken in students, and it's been an incredible effort that the parent community, the whole community has come together and has really been amazing, caring for these young people under these difficult circumstances. It is true that there is a shortage of Spanish-speaking staff, and they've got the money, but the staff isn't there. So I'm in constant communication with Kelly McGuire, and we're trying to get that need met. The schools are getting the money. That was a big priority, that they're getting the budget adjustments accordingly. But it's going to take everyone coming together to see us through this. And I can take some questions on the Watson and in that, if you'd like. Couple other things. The 10th Avenue bike lane, we're really excited for that to get started this spring, and hopefully they'll be coming back to you, Community Board 4, the Department of Transportation, with your suggestions incorporated that were made when they presented it to you. So we're working with Christine and Dale and Jeffrey on that. We had a hearing last week on my resolution calling on the Department of Transportation, on the Department of Education, to implement and fulfill its obligation to offer bike education classes in all schools, as they are required to by state law. We hear a lot about reckless riding, and yes, we need to have the right infrastructure, we need to have enforcement, but I believe that education is key. If we're going to develop a culture of bike safety in New York, we have to start from a young age, really getting through to kids about what the rules of the road are. We're not doing that at all. So let's have the Department of Education fulfill that. So that's a piece of legislation that we have going through. Today, the mayor signed our legislation regarding single-use plastics. So going forward, when you order takeout, you will have to proactively check the box saying you want them to send you public plastic cutlery. This sounds like a small thing, but our oceans are being choked with plastic, and we in New York are contributing to it. And I see Paul holding up the straw. I don't need them to send me a straw to my house. That's a small but important thing. I'm not going to take up more time. I could go on, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Eric, thank you, and congrats on that piece of legislation. Aurora, if you have a second for a couple of questions, Eric, we'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Hi, thank you so much, Councilman Bodger. for all the information. I had some questions about the Watson, and just you mentioned it's supposed to be 12 weeks at the cruise line, and I'm just curious, and it might be just because I'm a social worker. These people have been through transition after transition after transition. I'm just wondering, at what level do we say, hey, why are we continuing to put them to transitions? And where can we provide them more permanent space so that they can get acclimated with the city and they can get their working permits and they can provide themselves a sustainable living? Because I think that's exactly what they want to do, right?
That's right. And we don't want people to be shuffled around like musical chairs between hotels. Ultimately, for permanent housing, the city wants people to connect with familial and community networks and find housing that way. There is the New York City shelter system, which, by the way, the average stay in the New York City's shelter system is several years. And that speaks to the need for us to build housing, which we've talked about here before. But a lot of people in the New York City DHS system get housing for long periods of time. So there's that pipeline as well. In terms of work papers, that's a huge problem because under the asylum seeking program, you can't even get your work paper, apply for them until you've been in the country, I believe it's 7 months. And then there's many more months. But the latest problem that has been identified, and the Immigration Commissioner was talking about it today to me, is that they paused that program and you have to wait in your home country now to get on to request asylum. But the people are still coming, and they're still coming, but they're not in that program either. So they're entirely undocumented, and that's an additional problem. By the way, most of the folks I've anecdotally and people have said that most of the folks, the men in the Watson are working. And today, they were at work when I was there. There were very few people there at the cruise terminal. They're out working, not on the books, but they are bringing in income. But the horrible thing about this whole thing is like how badly we need workers. There's huge need in the restaurant industry. Upstate New York, forget about it. They need workers, they need people, but they can't legally work. So we've got a big disconnect here, not an easy problem to solve. It would take an act of Congress to change the work requirements.
Yeah, I just guess, like, at what point do we stop transitioning them because they're going through so many transitions to begin with?
Agree.
Thanks, Aurora. Just so everybody knows, Dale will have the last question, so no additional hands at this time. Hector?
Hello, Councilman. Good evening. I applaud your efforts in the educational aspects of biking in the city and building an infrastructure, a better infrastructure. But my concern lies more with the safety issues that we're having repeatedly, which we're all aware of. Where we see electric bikes on the going against traffic, going on the sidewalks. We have seniors who are afraid to walk outside for fear of getting hurt. Because these bicyclists, especially, and I have no issue against delivery workers getting their job done, but there's a lot of recklessness going on out there when they're doing their deliveries, unfortunately. And they're going at high speeds because they have multiple deliveries to make in a minimal amount of time. Is there any plans to try to do something, some sort of enforcement, or maybe forcing the restaurants to have to register licenses for these bicycles, so at least there'll be some kind of accountability? Because right now you can't identify anybody who commits these illegal activities, because they are illegal, running on the sidewalks the way they are at high speeds, endangering people and families and children as well.
I happen to think if a rule is on the books, it should be enforced. The precincts are writing tickets. A friend of mine got a ticket for running a red light the other day. He says that it wasn't his fault, but he got a ticket. I was happy to hear it, actually. It means that they're doing something. But I think we could all agree that it doesn't seem like there's very many. For my part, I'm really searching for, any other out of the box things we can do. That's why, I think education in all our schools, we're working with Los Deliveristas, the organization that works with the delivery people, to try to get some traction that way. In terms of the identification for the restaurants, at one point you did have them with the vests with the name of the restaurant on the back. Now, though, they're not delivering for like one restaurant like the old times. Now they're delivering for Uber Eats, Seamless, whatever, like all three the same night. So they're not even part of those, but it is a big issue, and we're going to continue to work through it. Very, very important for us to get to a culture of bike safety like they have in many cities around the world. We do not have that in New York.
Thanks.
Thanks, Hector. Dolores?
So first, my pet turtle, and I thank you for sponsoring and advocating for getting rid of the plastic utensils. So thank you for that. My turtle T, who is still hibernating, would thank you when he wakes up. I want to echo Hector's concerns. It's not just a matter of enforcement. We really need to think about, yes, you can create this infrastructure, et cetera, but we have created pretty much free reign. And that's not just delivery folks. If we think about city bike riders, many of them won't get tickets, don't follow the laws, et cetera. So I think it's real important in your legislative ability to really push upon more of how do we create public safety around biking. And then maybe that means we have to think about how much biking is actually occurring in the city. If we think about a morning like this morning, I was probably the only idiot out there biking in the sleet, okay, because it's not used when the weather is bad, and in the wintertime, we do not have that many people that are using bicycles. Something to consider, because we're spending a lot of money in the budget on this, so I think we need to consider the public safety as well as the amount of money that we're putting into infrastructure and whether that makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks, Dolores. Joe?
Hey, Eric.
Oh, wait, Dolores, I biked to work this morning too, so.
So
sorry,
we're both
Joe,
crazy.
I biked to the cruise terminal today from the Brooklyn Borough Hall. I was very cold.
You are definitely crazy, Eric. There's no question on that. So I want to bring to your attention
Winded, out of breath.
that I learned this afternoon by total chance. I was in a discussion with investors in our 500 West 42nd Street building, which is a partially supportive housing building. And I confirmed something that I knew, but I really got confirmed for the first time. We have a structural problem happening with DHS referrals that really you should be aware of and I want the public to be aware of. Clinton Housing currently has 25 vacant homeless units in shared apartments or studios, which we cannot rent because we cannot get referrals from the Department of Homeless Services. Or when we get referrals, people don't show up, or when they show up, they say they don't want a studio or shared apartment. They can get a FEPS voucher. They want to look for a 1-bedroom. I'm just amazed that with the number of shelter rooms that are opening in our district, we would take various types of people to get from shelter into a permanent space. But structurally, DHS has created a system that people believe they can go someplace else to rent an apartment. And they certainly don't even want to share an apartment. They will say they will turn it down and stay in a shelter. Yet we're opening more shelters and more shelter rooms and moving like chess pieces some of the asylees around. I will talk to you offline, but I just wanted you to know, I was shocked. In 3 years, we have not been able to rent certain apartments because people don't show up, or they show up and they don't give documents, or they just say, no, we're not interested, and they're going to stay in a shelter. I was just, I'm very rarely speechless, Eric. This knocked me for a loop today.
So why don't I set up a conversation with you and Gary Jenkins, the commissioner of DSS, because I would like, if this is happening at Clinton Housing, that means it's happening all over the city.
It is, yes.
There should not be one vacant apartment in any affordable or supportive housing building right now.
I found out today that it's happening at Urban Pathways, at Project Renewal, and True Colors in the Bronx. They are able to rent vacant apartments or shared suites. This is insane.
Yeah, let's include them. I think this is a very important priority.
Thank you.
Say.
Thanks, Joe. Dale? Mr. Corvino, are you there?
He's sitting
Sorry.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry about that. The keys were sticky for a minute. I'm on my phone because our cable is out in this area because of something or another. Anyway, hey Eric, I'm so happy to hear about the stuff on the 10th Avenue bike lane. I tend to agree about, instilling a culture and compliance among cyclists. And I'm glad to hear that you're working with Los Deliveristas. From my conversation with some of the delivery workers, a lot of them have just made a concerted decision to ride on sidewalks because they find the streets are too dangerous. And some of them have pointed things out to me that, with all the obstacles and double and triple parking, it is problematic. So I think the culture of compliance among cyclists will trickle down when we have better cultural compliance among automobile users. But anyway, I wanted to ask about your placard abuse legislation, because I noted today that the fine went up for ghost placards or ghost plates.
Yep.
And if that's something that your legislation, we'd love to hear more about your legislation and the related legislation on placard abuse as well at Transpo.
So the ghost cars with the obstructed license plates are proliferating in big numbers, and you can buy on Amazon something that will either tint your license plate from a speed camera. It will, when the flash will reflect it. It's a really big problem. And then you got people who just don't have plates or just cover their plates up. One of the problems is that the city isn't transparent about how often this is happening. And the data we do have was obtained by FOIL request. So I have a bill that will require the Department of Transportation to post monthly on its website all the different times that a license plate that was obstructed, a license plate couldn't be read. This data will help us more fully understand the problem and the trends that we're facing. They increased the fine. I was on a call, actually at Community Board 2 before this, and Brad Hoylman-Siegel said that Senator Gutierrez has a bill that would allow citizens to report cars with obstructed license plates, and they would get 25% of the fine if they do it. So it's like that one that bill where people can report idling. Kind of controversial because there's been, some fist fights in the street over that kind of thing. But that's another approach where we could get these things off the road. The PD says that they are getting a lot of these things towed and ticketed, but anecdotally, the enforcement doesn't seem to be as as strong as the problem is serious. It's a very serious problem and very dangerous.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd love to learn more. Maybe this month at Transpo you can come.
yeah, we're supposed to have, so I was just texting with the chair of the Transportation Committee earlier, and she says that we may be having a hearing on my legislation as early as in the next few weeks.
Great. So we'll take it from there. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Just a final, there's a hearing on February 28th about community boards. Can you share anything about it with the city council?
It's a city council hearing about community boards.
Jesse, what was it? It was a council hearing on appointments?
Yeah, well, it's titled as appointments and support for community boards. And I know we usually are tacked onto something during the budget season, but this seemed different because this was just out of the blue, just on appointments and community boards. I wasn't sure if there was.
Do you remember which committee it is?
I'm sorry, say again?
Remember which council committee it is?
I believe it's open government. I believe it's the government, not open government. I'm sorry.
GovOps.
Oversight.
GovOps. Thank you. GovOps. My apologies. GovOps.
I'll check it out. It sounds interesting. I'll find out what that's about.
I appreciate it.
Councilmember, thank you for being here and see you
so much. Really appreciate you having me. Good luck on tonight's meeting, everyone. Great work.
Thank
Really
you.
Great to see you all.
Up next, we are joined by our borough president, Mark Levine, coming off a very successful State of the Borough.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and wonderful to see my friend Councilmember Botcher and get the update. We really did have a great night last night. I saw many of you there uptown. Our first annual State of the Borough address. We had over 500 people. It was a chance to take stock of the progress we're making in our comeback and also really talk honestly about the challenges. We are making progress. Little known fact, Manhattan's population is actually up almost 4% compared to pre-pandemic. You might not know that reading the tabloids, but that's what the data showed. But as I said, we also really honestly talked about challenges, the affordability crisis brought about by the lack of affordable housing, lack of housing in general, that we absolutely must address by creating more housing. And on that front, I got to take my hat off to CB4. You all have been an example for the entire city in being proactive on this and not just sitting back and waiting till a developer or a city agency comes by with a proposal. You've taken a look proactively at your community district and you've pointed to where we can build housing that we need. And we've now done that borough-wide for Manhattan. We issued the report yesterday. It was kind of the centerpiece of the speech. We identified 171 properties borough-wide, a number of which are here in CB4, 9 rezoning neighborhoods borough-wide, a number of which, again, in CB4. Very consistent with locations you've been working on that you identified in your report. I think there'd be few surprises for this board because you've been so active on it. But we want to push. We want to push with you to get this done. We found about a dozen city-owned sites in CB4 owned by various city agencies that could and should be, actually also state too, that could and should be developed for affordable housing. And it's going to take pushing because there are delays in the pipeline and we want to join you in that fight. So thank you for leading on this. Another issue that we identified in the speech and that I know is very much on your mind is our challenges in public safety. And on that front, we've pointed to a really successful multi-agency coordinated effort in 125th Street that we believe could serve as a model for Hell's Kitchen. This is an effort in place on the eastern part of 125th, which has brought together the local precinct, Department of Homeless Services, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, DOT, parks, the DA's office, and really months of intensive effort. It has been incredibly effective at making that part of 125th Street safer, healthier, greener than it's been in years. And so I have joined with our local elected officials, Councilmember Botcher, not sure if he's still on, Senator Hoyland Siegel, Assemblymember Simone, in calling for this multi-agency model to be replicated in Hell's Kitchen, because you face some of the same problems that we've been seeing on 125th. And actually, I've been speaking this week to DA Alvin Bragg, who was also extremely supportive of implementing this. And so we're going to do some joint advocacy to get this done. More to come on that, but I want you to know that we're working really, really hard on this. We have identified a number of environmental and resiliency priorities that will impact CB4 for sure. I know that I think in the last couple of weeks, you all held a briefing with my general counsel, Tommy Vest, who also happens to be an expert in environmental law, about our plan to create a new waterfront protection agency. I think this would really help CB4 in working through waterfront issues. I know you had the briefing with her. We're excited to continue to partner with you on that. We're also pushing as a resiliency measure, as a way to fight climate change, the planting of 1 million more trees in New York City. I've joined with all of my borough presidents in calling for this. We are asking community boards to weigh in on this, to ideally pass a resolution. I don't think CB4 has. I'm sure it's in the works. Do you know where we are on that, Mr. Chair?
We have a long history of supporting this, and we'll be getting you a
formal
support to make sure that you can get those trees planted.
I love it. I love it. Also, an environmental issue, a quality of life issue, an anti-rat issue is composting. And we're way behind in composting in CB4, borough-wide, citywide. And we want every single building in Manhattan by default to have composting pickup. That's what we want. And actually, we wrote a letter together with all the local council members, Councilmember Robacher, and all Manhattan council members, calling for this. And there's good news on that front. Progress, not enough yet, but progress. The mayor announced last week that the city is going to bring composting curbside to every building in every borough in New York City, including Manhattan. This is great news. Now, the timeline is not quite what I was hoping for. The Manhattan launch date is not till October 2024. So we don't want to wait 24 months. We're going to be pushing to speed that up. In the meantime, we are calling for a great interim measure. Have any of you seen these orange boxes popping up in other neighborhoods? Not yet in CB4. But in other neighborhoods. These are recycling bins. They are locked. You can only access them with an app. It's been a way of controlling and making sure only compost goes in. They've been wildly successful. I would like to see them deployed all over Manhattan. I'd like to see 100, 200 all over Manhattan, including CB4, not as a substitute for curbside pickup, but as a great measure. If you're, first off, interim, if you're waiting and your building's not yet in the program, you can walk to your corner. Also, if you're out and about, you're in the city, you have food you're eating and you want to dispose of it, you can access one of these orange bins. So stay tuned on that, more to come. I think you all have heard us talk a lot about the open meetings law and the fact that it's a boring topic, I know, but it could mean that you have to go back in person or hybrid. The mayor did extend it again till February 13th. Here's why I'm bringing it up. I feel that with the pending expiration of the federal emergency COVID order, that it might influence the city to stop renewing its emergency COVID order. That is, if that wasn't clear to you, the mechanism by which we're allowed to continue to do community board meetings all virtual. So I'm just putting it on the radar so that you all prepare for the possible lifting of that. We're with you as partners on this. I really believe you should still have the flexibility to do meetings online if you think it's best, and to have more flexibility in the hybrid format if you think it's best. And if you do have to go into some sort of in-person arrangement, we want to be there for you as support on logistics and giving you legal guidance on that. So we're going to be there with partners with you. I think I'm going to pause there because I've spoken for a long time. But if there's time, Mr. Chair, to take a couple questions, I'm very happy to.
Sure, we'll take the two hands that are up tonight. Christine, first, please.
Yes, congratulations, Borough President. Those orange boxes, it would be great to put them in the parking lane.
As opposed to on the sidewalk?
Yes.
I will, not only will I tell it to DOT, but if you, Christine, or you, the board, want to begin to identify specific locations,
anywhere. Anywhere, it
got it.
works.
But I hear you. Okay, I hear you.
Anywhere you have, if you have a car, instead of a car, you can put them there, because we just have so many things on the sidewalk, you know, and at the corner. So that's it. Wanted to follow up on your tree initiative. I absolutely love it. Wanted to raise the issues of what we have currently with the Department of Parks. Whenever there are construction, it is very, very easy for the developers to cut mature trees. And just like on affordable housing, it is as important to protect the apartments as planting the new trees. For trees, they do not absorb the
storm runoff.
Yeah, right. No, not storm runoff, but the air, the
carbon.
Until they are 25 years old. Before that, they don't absorb anything. So we need to really start thinking about protecting the mature trees. And just because a developer has decided to put a crane in one place, not to cut the trees, they have to be protected. This is an investment we have done over time, over the years. It's now producing results. And now we shouldn't allow for those, you know, people can design around the trees. They can have the door a few feet on the left or a few feet on the right. We cannot be cutting the trees all the time. And it's very, very annoying and very, you know, we've been planting 300 trees in this neighborhood starting 15 years ago. And when we start to see developers coming in and starting to cut them, it really makes me really, really upset. So that's something that needs to be resolved with the Department of Park. The second thing is that every time the Department of we build bike lanes, the islands cannot receive any more trees, because DEP or somebody has decided that it was going to wreck their you know, underground. And it's another real issue, because we are building those islands, which are very unpleasant, and where in the past having a tree along the bike lane was really very nice, or for everybody to look at. So those two issues really should be addressed. And the third one is, when you have open restaurant and sidewalk cafe, the trees should be considered an obstruction on the sidewalk, and today they are not. And that's ridiculous, because if you can walk through a tree, I want to see that.
Okay, all good points. Very quickly, because I know we have other people waiting. We need to do better maintaining our street trees. There are street trees which are dying because we're not investing enough in maintenance. It's a rough life to be a tree in an urban environment, and pruning and care of the tree pit are really important. You have some great block associations in CB4 which are doing it. We need real resources and a better system on this from the Parks Department. That's got to be part of planting more trees. We've also got to make sure that current trees and new trees are well maintained. That's a really critical point. As for the planting of trees on islands, I mean, it is true that there's some parts of the city where you can't dig a pit because there's underground infrastructure, but you can do an above ground. There are ways to do an above ground container, and I think I would need to look at specific locations you've identified where you've been told that you can't put a tree, and we could explore an alternative of having an above ground planter. Those can be very successful in more difficult places. Anyway, I appreciate all your points. Thank you, Christine.
Thanks, Christine. Dolores?
I echo Christine's points about how we can be a little bit more proactive with developers and ensuring that part of their plan is to think about the treescape. As many of us on this community board are master composters, I think, Jeffrey, you might be one as well, right? Love the composting program. Is that being sponsored out of your office, Borough President? And is the app something that's developed by your office?
I wish I could take credit. This is being run by the Department of Sanitation. and the app is their app. But I think that we all have a big role in education, because
That was my point. Education is important because, as all of us master composters know, you might think of something you could throw in there and that compost actually is not usable in the way that we want. Again, applaud that they're focusing on it. I appreciate that. I do, however, have to disagree with Christine. I don't think that in this forum we can determine what the community needs in terms of where they want placement. I think that we would need a public forum for having that discussion with our broader community to understand where placement within the community makes sense. So, Christine, I agree. We want more boxes, but I think that at our board meeting, we can't determine where the community needs it.
Thank you, Dolores.
Thanks, Dolores. Leslie with the final question.
You know what? I might just defer, because I was going to talk about composting, and I think we've had enough of composting, so I might pass it. But as the co-chair of WPE, Waterfront Parks and Environment, Borough President, anything you guys can do to help us, and we will contact your office to get those bins ASAP. Whatever we can do in our district would be welcome.
I love it.
Whatever help you guys can do. But
Okay.
everyone has said pretty much what I said about composting. I just want to hammer it home if it hasn't been hammered home already.
Thank you, Leslie, for leading on that. I can see this would appear to be a popular topic in CB4. Thank you all so much for having me on. Really a pleasure. Good luck for the rest of the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borough President. We'll see you soon. All right, I am now pleased to share that there are a dozen other elected officials from other districts. I'm just kidding. We're moving right along in the agenda, and I want to pass it over to Jesse for his report.
I'm sorry. My computer logged out, so I can't find my report. It's been that long, by the way. Okay. Anyway, so one thing obviously everybody already knows about, right? So the EO got extended for another month or so. So we are virtual for the month of for February. And we'll have to see as we go. Just to remind everybody, we have made all of we do have a approved hybrid policy that the board approved. We do have a plan in place for if we do go to a hybrid design, in which the committees will be meeting in the district office conference room area, and then the full board meetings will be held also in person in larger venues. We will have and we will have hybrid options for both of those scenarios, if that comes to pass. What else? I wanted to make sure people saw that the current street fair and street festival schedule for 2023 is up on our website. We blasted that out most recently, but it is on our website. So, and obviously as new applications come in, we'll be updating that, but it has been something that we always used to do, and we sort of taken a pause on that during COVID, and we're back. And so I think it's a fun thing to do, obviously, and fun thing to see all of the fun street fairs and block festivals that are happening. Do not get bent out of shape if your particular event is not on there. Contact me and I will make sure it gets on there. It's just I'm working off of the street permit office's list. The other thing I just want to make sure people updated, we updated our large construction project website, the page on our website for that. So that's up to date with all, I think, of all of the current city run or utility run or transit run projects. It does not include every street project or private property project, but it does involve any of the major utilities and street city property projects. This upcoming month, there are two committees that are meeting at different times than they normally would be. Chelsea Land Use Committee will be meeting on the Tuesday, I believe the 21st. And that is due to President's Day being celebrated on the 20th, and then exec will be meeting that Wednesday right after on the 22nd. All other committees meet at this normal time. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Jesse. I will be direct a number of small meetings this past month. Clinton Health, let's see, Clue and Chelsea Land Use and Housing met with Councilmember Bottcher's office and Related regarding the rebuilding of 500 West 28th Street for affordable housing. You'll recall this is a building that was illegally torn down, and we have commitments for it to be rebuilt, which is great news. CB4, we met, the Penn Station Working Group members met with Congressman Nadler's office and staff regarding Penn Station and also updates to the Hudson River Tunnel project, also referred to as Gateway, of which President Biden was in town yesterday to announce a $292 million grant to keep that moving forward. Of course, his visit may have snarled our streets, but it was for good news to improve infrastructure and keep, North America's biggest transit project moving forward. We also learned at that meeting with the congressman a pretty significant piece of news regarding our long sought after EMS station on West 29th Street. The development of that site was being held up because of the construction staging for Gateway, which is going to enter in the same area. However, good news, they've come to a resolution that construction staging can take place in the roadway of 29th Street, which is a westbound street and really only goes from 11th, and at that case, it goes from 11th Avenue to the West Side Highway. So instead of preventing the EMS facility from proceeding over the next decade, we're now going to be able to allow Gateway construction to move ahead at full steam, and likewise for the city to begin construction as soon as they are able on the EMS station. So those projects can go up alongside each other. I see Matt Green applauding as he worked on this for a long time. This is a really great update, and we are excited to be able to continue pushing the EMS site forward. But this was a major snag that has since been resolved. Transportation Committee participated in the MTA's West 28th Street Substation Construction Advisory Committee. This is a now constituted committee that will continue meeting as a part of the substation construction project. Working groups this month, the Capstone project continues to meet. You will be, you received today or yesterday maybe, an email from the board regarding a very brief survey about the work the Capstone team is doing. Please fill out that survey. Please share it with your neighbors. Use it as a way to send that email to your neighbors to get them to, one, sign up for community board emails and get them engaged on all the good work we're doing. Your feedback on this is very important so we can come up with a really robust, workable project through Capstone. You'll hear more about the Cannabis Working Group later this evening when they report on that letter. There was a meeting last week regarding the Penn Station Public Realm Planning Task Force, and the Port Authority Bus Terminal Replacement Working Group has a meeting with our friends at the Port Authority later this month in February, which we're very much looking forward to that re-engagement and continuing to move the discussions and the project forward. I would also note that we are setting up in parallel track meetings with relevant agencies as it relates to the port redevelopment, given the number of agencies that will be involved in this project, not just through the ULURP, but through the planning around the sort of permanent siting of the whole station. So stay tuned for updates as those meetings get calendared as well. At the February Executive Committee meeting, we'll be discussing any potential casino proposals in and around Community Board 4. And we'll also be taking up, I'm announcing it tonight because it's due on March 1st, and I did not want to take it up as new business this evening. So at February Exec, I'll be requesting a letter to be sent to the State Redistricting Commission regarding the new state assembly district lines. We've written 2 letters on this topic already, so I'm going to ask Exec to write that letter and have full board ratify it at the March meeting because the deadline is March 1st. And finally, I announced that we'll be doing a bylaws task force. I almost have the complete list of that committee. So once that happens, I'll share that with you all, but we'll be kicking that off in earnest in the month ahead. So stay tuned for progress on that. That concludes my report. And so with that, I am happy to say we'll move right into the business portion of our meeting. And I will first hand it over to Frank for BLP, because I know that Bert is not with us this evening.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to start by taking a minute to explain, particularly to the BLP committee, what happened to the withdrawn agenda item 7, which is 627th 11th Avenue. This was a proposed mega club at 11th Avenue and 47th Street in a former auto dealership that was going to have a capacity of 2,000 people inside and 2,500 people on the roof, which was the second floor, where they also wanted to have amplified music. The committee, voted to recommend outright denial, and we wrote a pretty stern letter about that. Perhaps reading the letter that was on the website, the applicant has withdrawn that application. They say they're going to go back to the drawing board and try to formulate something that may be more palatable, but we will probably see them again in BLP, probably not in February, but some month thereafter. Other than that, there were no public comments about items 1 through 6. So don't need to single any of those out, but obviously we'll take questions about any of them.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions for BLP? Great. Thanks to Frank and the committee, including for item 7, which was withdrawn. So thank you for that. Up next, Leslie and Marty with WPE, please.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We have 3 letters tonight. Our first letter, I'm just gonna see if I'm in the right order, is the Chelsea Park Dog Run. I am going to pass it for this letter to Carl Wilson. He wrote the letter, so he will present tonight.
Carl,
Carl, you there?
he was.
I saw him.
Carl is not with us.
He's
dropped.
not with us. Maybe he, okay. I wanted him
Unlike Carl to
present.
miss a moment in the light. So
And I wanted him to present for his first letter, but I'll just, it's pretty self-explanatory.
He's back.
He's back.
Carl.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm having a lot of tech issues on my end. I apologize.
Carl, go for it. It's your letter. It's your big letter
Yes.
on
my
the
first
never
one.
ending dog park topic.
Yes, so this letter is pretty straightforward. This evening, it is a letter to Parks Department, who came to our committee this past month to ask permission to begin exploring the idea of a temporary dog run set up at the handball courts at Chelsea Park. So this letter is simply says that the committee supports their exploration of this and that we look forward to opining on a more permanent plan at our next meeting. We did, I know Betty sent over a few edits that we will incorporate into the letter, but that's it for this one.
thank you, Carl. Betty? Betty, you're on mute.
Thank you for acknowledging my little edits. You just said that the exploring for a temporary dog park over at Chelsea Park. I didn't think the letter said that it would be considered temporary. So
I'm sorry if I said temporary. I misspoke. It is to be a more permanent dog run at Chelsea Park.
Right, and I assume then it'll be some kind of proposal that the community can comment on?
Yes, our expectation is that they will bring a more fleshed out proposal for what they want to do with the space to our next committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Katie?
Thanks. I think it's a little bit similar to what Betty was just saying. I think it would just be helpful if we included some language, I guess as a friendly amendment, to just say, we support this idea of exploring the handball court location and, look forward to a community input process or something, just to let people in the community know that, we care about what they want to say about it. That's all. And I would also just, by the way, suggest that where you reference the handball courts, that you also put the address, because I don't know where it is in the community. And I just thought like if you can put a street or something, it would be helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie.
Also, if I just might, for everybody to know, I suggested that the letter include a sentence that the temporary dog park in the playground has been closed for a number of weeks. I think that everyone should know that.
Thanks. I think these are happy to accept both of these comments.
Jesse?
Yes, I'd like to say, Carl, I understand it's your birthday today, so I would like to just express a happy birthday. Thank you very much.
Jesse, don't take the
Thank
WPE
you.
chair's thunder.
Yeah,
before
I was
we
gonna say, exactly.
Thank you. I'm happy to be spending it with all of you tonight.
Happy birthday, Carl.
Are you singing?
He had to find a way to have a spotlight. That's why, he demanded, Leslie, didn't he demand to present this letter? Is that what it
He
was?
said, "This is my topic.
Yeah.
I'm presenting."
Thank you, Carl. Happy birthday. Leslie, back to you.
Carl, thank you so much.
I'm sorry. Hold on one sec, Leslie. Chris, I'm sorry, I missed your hand.
Yeah, no, I had reviewed the letter, and the letter didn't really represent what was said at committee. There should, if there was a friendly amendment that we had agreed upon prior to voting, which was that we are acknowledging Park's efforts to reach out to community stakeholders in the siting of this dog run in Chelsea Waterside Park. So if that could just be added on there, that was something that was agreed upon in the committee. That was including Hudson Guild, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when we say so to add a line about that, to specifically name those that would be caught in the community.
Naming out the organizations, which was the Nitro representation, Hudson Guild, et cetera. So that way it stated that we had the intent and we had made that request on top of any additional community input that is being looked at from other individuals of the board.
Okay.
Maybe it would be helpful if people were sending their language by emails.
Yeah, Chris,
Thank you,
I'm
Chris.
happy to incorporate.
Yeah, thank you.
Something along those lines. If you want to shoot me what you think that language should say.
Yeah, but, it was recorded in committee meeting.
Maria?
Thanks, Jeffrey. My question was, Carl, the vote. I don't know if you said it. If you did, I apologize. I missed it. At committee.
The vote?
Yeah.
The vote
was everyone in favor?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think I have a placeholder. I can just amend it to.
Usually our placeholder is for the full board vote. We don't reflect committee votes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone was in favor, though, is what I heard you say.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
If I could just clarify, so guys, this was a very unique situation, right, Carl? I mean, usually parks don't come to us to ask for an exploration or at least a letter. Can we please explore this? They were just doing this because they know the sensitivity and the discussion that has happened previously. So this is really just a letter saying, sure, knock yourself out. Let's explore this opportunity with robust community input, and let's see what happens from there.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank
Carl,
you, Carl.
am I correct with that, Carl? Do you?
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. You can go back to your cake now. Leslie, for 9 and 10.
I was going to serenade Carl, but I don't think we all would really like that much. And anyway, we have two more, as you said, 9 and 10. So one, Manhattan Borough President Levine touched upon. It is a letter about their proposal or their suggestion of an idea of a waterfront oversight agency. So this is an idea from the Manhattan Borough President's Office and the Manhattan Borough President of, since there is no waterfront agency to deal with, as we're going to see now, coastline resiliency more often, or anything built in the water or maritime solutions. They were asking for our support for the exploration of one, so they can promote it to the city and the mayor. We noted in the letter that really our district, and we talked about it in the meeting with the Borough President's Office, I would think pretty much, right, Jeffrey, just about all of our water side is controlled by Hudson River Park. So that's all, it's all state. So this probably wouldn't directly affect us, though there would be, if this ever happened, conversations among agencies, state and city. So we just wanted to voice a support that, yes, this is worth looking into. And that is mentioned in the letter. I don't know if there's any questions on that, or we can move to the second one, the third one. excuse me. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Christine, you sent me a, maybe mention the Greenway, for a line, though that's not.
Christine, you're on
it's not
mute.
Am I on mute?
No, Christine is.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I suggest when the plan, which was somewhat presented, included constructions on the Greenway and on the highway. And since we always have such difficulty dealing with the multiple agencies, even though it's not a suggestion of the borough president, I thought maybe we should place a line there saying, you know, if they are going to think about that, they need to think about the Greenway and the highway as well.
Sure. I mean, I think I would gladly say, please consider it, but that would be way out of the scope of this letter and of the agency. It's not even a borough-wide, it's a citywide agency they're proposing to deal with coastal resiliency, as not necessarily building as I know everyone's sensitive to it because we've seen it in the plans of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recently, but that's not what this is. This is way out in the water and talking more about maritime construction and environmental maritime situations. But I mean, I'm sure we can add it. It won't be part of the context, but there's no harm in adding it.
Right, that's what I think. There is no harm, right?
Yeah.
But that would be great to add it, I think.
Sure.
Thank you.
Betty?
Yes, I'm unmuted, yes. As I said earlier, I think it would help the letter to say that this is for citywide, because it was not clear whether it was just for Manhattan or that it was citywide. And the charter mandates a waterfront management advisory board, which deals with the waterfront and policy and provides guidance to the Department of City Planning, and which develops a comprehensive waterfront plan every 10 years. So it puzzled me a little bit how this agency would relate to something that's already charter mandated. Perhaps it would be good if somebody or the borough president could clarify how it relates to existing bureaucracy about the waterfront.
That's a great point. And Betty, and we talked about different, not only that, but how it would relate to other agencies that already take some control over this. And I think this is in a planning stage. It's in a proposal stage. I don't think it's necessarily in a, I don't want to say thought of further down the line, but I think they see a need for one agency to oversee waterfront. I don't want to say all environment, but waterfront projects. But I can forward the question. Would you like me to forward the question to the Manhattan Borough President's office on this specific topic?
Well, I think
where they see it.
It would be good for them to realize that there is a body already mandated to do something very similar to what they're trying to do with this proposal. So maybe they could clarify it for the community board, what the difference is between what they have, or is the other thing dysfunctional, or
So I think we mentioned, they said this, they see also having a budget allowance, having financial purses that others do not. They see it as a regular agency that it's a real agency that reports to the mayor, kind of like DOT or DOE, not any type of mandate, that it's an actual functioning agency with purse strings. So that's what I don't know if that gives you any clarity, but it might be a little bit more defined that way. But we definitely will put in the citywide ad that you said. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Betty. Item 10, Leslie.
Item 10, yeah, let me just pull it up. That is just so the Highline Section 3 of the Western Rail Yard Reconstruction Project. They are doing a little bit of repaving. They are adding some lights. There is no structural construction. The structure is going to be there. I know Paul Devlin called me and mentioned that. I just want to thank you, Paul, for that. There is no structural construction. It's really just that it is worn away over the last 10 years and they are refurbishing it. And this
Betty,
is
did you have a question on this letter also? Okay. Leslie, thank you.
Thank you.
And to WPE, thank you. Up next, over to Alan and Kit for ACEs, please.
Evening, everybody. I can summarize the first letter, and then I think Katie will take the lead on the second. It's pretty straightforward. Just sort of going on the record to say that we want to encourage the New York Public Library system to invest in ongoing maintenance to avoid what could be a relatively quick, relatively inexpensive fix ballooning into something that is extremely time-consuming and extremely expensive. As well as just provide a little bit more transparency about how they make decisions around what they are investing in terms of upkeep and renovations. This stems from our experience with the Columbus branch, which we flagged way back when would benefit from some tender love and care, and because it has not, is not in good shape and requires some very significant work. We also thank the New York Public Library team for all of the invaluable work that they do in our community, and generally said that we love them. We just want them to invest more in upkeep. Any questions on that one before I turn it over to Katie?
Thanks, Kit. You said Katie was presenting on item 12?
I believe so, but Alan, correct me.
Yep. Hey, thanks for that. So item 12 is a letter that I actually referenced earlier briefly when we were speaking with the representative from the mayor's office. But this is a letter to DOE, DHS, and Health and Hospitals and the mayor's office, where we are requesting two things. The first one is shelter-based tutoring and after-school programming, including language skills support for the students whose families are seeking asylum. And again, as we mentioned, during our ACEs committee meeting, we heard that many students are being bused to schools because the DOE prioritizes school assignments for these students for schools that have bilingual programs. And because many of those are pretty far away, students have to be bused there because they're being bused there. They can't stay after school for tutoring and after school. So we are requesting that those programs be offered in the shelters themselves. And the second thing that we're asking for in this letter is cultural competency training for all of the staff working in the shelters with the asylum-seeking families. Given all of the various issues that they faced, we think that it's really important that shelter staff be trained so that they can be sensitive to the needs of the shelter residents. So yeah, that's what the letter says.
Betty?
Any questions?
You're on mute, Betty.
Okay, there we go. I think it's a fantastic idea and much needed. And I see the letter is requesting funding. Is there some chance that there's going to be funding, or would it come from a pot from the city or the feds or the state? Do you have any kind of feel for where this funding could come from? And then I had this idea that popped into my head while the whole discussion about the lack of Spanish speaking students, that we ought to have some kind of like program where students, get some kind of compensation, college students or something, for who speak Spanish or are bilingual to work in these situations. Some kind of award or something like that, Peace Corps or something, Anyway, so I was just concerned about the money aspect and how much it would cost.
Well, we didn't talk much at our committee about the funding issue, other than the fact that funding is needed. But what we have heard is that obviously the city has set aside money to support the asylum seekers, but they're, as we all know, they're requesting a lot more money from the federal government. And so we weren't specific here, like we don't care where this money comes from, but we're trying to identify for the city this very specific need, and whether they can use, if they get the federal funding, if they can use that, awesome. But we think that money should be set aside.
Okay.
Aurora?
Katie, I just was curious if it's too late, and if it is, it's okay. But if we can include like trauma-informed cultural competency into our letter. I know I think we briefly like discussed it, because I think that that's really key. Just because many of the asylum seekers have experienced trauma as they've started to migrate over. Yeah. And it's very important that like the staff is informed of what trauma could possibly potentially look like.
So say it again. So you said trauma-informed
cultural competency.
Okay. So
just trauma
one of the
informed
issues that that popped into my head when I was writing this, but happy to take that and try and put it in here, was that I wanted to be careful that we weren't, I didn't want there to be any confusion saying that we are expecting or wanting psychological or social, like we're not expecting the staff themselves to provide this very needed thing, right? We want them to, but so it sounds like you're saying, but if we say trauma-informed cultural competency, that
it's like a basic understanding of what trauma could present itself as.
Okay.
And that would be like that's my understanding of it. It's just a basic understanding of how trauma could present itself. And that's both, like the physical presentation of it in children and adults, in families, and just being and how it can be triggered, right? And
Great.
I think that we need to be very cognizant of that as a community.
And I'm happy to accept that as a friendly amendment. And I'll add it in, yep.
Thanks, Aurora. Thank you for that, Katie. And ACES. Over to JD and Paul for Clinton House Kitchen Land Use, please.
Paul, I'll take this. Thank you, Jeffrey. McGraw Hill Building on 42nd Street. Landmark, the exterior is landmark. They came to us 2 years ago for some changes. They came back again for some tweaks to the approved changes because they're going to make the 12th to 34th floor residential. The committee was okay with the changes. So we had a couple requests, and it's in the letter.
Thank you, JD. David?
Yeah, I have a problem with the entrance canopy that's proposed. Raymond Hood designed the building. with an entrance that seems to sweep people off the sidewalk and into the lobby. That's why the sides of the entrance are curved and have horizontal speed lines that extend into the lobby. It's all about inward flow. The proposed canopy projects outward in direct conflict with Hood's clearly intended effect. It complicates the clarity and simplicity that makes his entrance so powerful. It also blocks views of the signage above the entrance, which Hood's original design put on such prominent, unobstructed display. One member of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee felt that because people both enter and leave the building, there was nothing wrong with adding the canopy's outward emphasis. I'm not comfortable with second-guessing Raymond Hood or trying to improve on a masterpiece or rewriting architectural history. Hood was the most important and innovative skyscraper architect of his time, despite designing only 5 towers, 4 of which are in New York. McGraw-Hill was his last and most ahead of its time. It helped usher in the international style, which would dominate world architecture decades later. McGraw-Hill is featured in some of the most influential 20th century books on modern architecture. It's not just another landmark skyscraper. It moved the needle of architecture. I wrote a paper on this building in architecture school 45 years ago. Architecture students and enthusiasts should be able to visit and see the entrance Hood designed for it. I understand that canopies add a sense of luxury to an apartment building and make residents feel important, but living in this building should be enough to do that. We're at risk of losing something very important here. I propose changing the letter to oppose the canopy.
David, thank you. You're 100% right in terms of purity, but this building was designed, as you know, as an industrial building. It's now going to be primarily residential. The canopy is rather a small structure, and you brought this up at the committee, and the committee was unanimous in saying that the canopy was not going to be a big problem. But in terms of purity, you are right, but I don't think, unless there's an outcry from the rest of the committee, that the letter is going to be changed.
Thanks, JD, and thanks, David. James?
Good evening. First, I want to apologize to JD for not being able to attend the committee meeting. I was attending a funeral outside the continent. That being said, I wanted to ask if there was any discussion, or if there could be this evening, regarding the changes to the interior. I seem to recall when the original letter was discussed and the changes that were being proposed were discussed, there was a push on behalf of the committee to really, insist that internal changes not be made, and then they made them anyway. So maybe it would be a friendly amendment to at least express our displeasure with the fact that the interior has been gutted, if that's factually correct.
JD, if I could just be really clear on something just quickly. We unfortunately lost the battle that we waged for lobby interior landmark designation. I think the wound is frankly still semi-fresh for this board and the committee and those who care about this. So I think it is out of scope for the letter. And I do not want to reopen discussion on interior discussions this evening because of how lengthy those discussions were at the time. JD, something more to add?
Yes, it was discussed, James, at the meeting, and there is a paragraph in the letter about the lobby.
Thanks, JD. Can you tell me which line that is? Because I might have missed it.
Don't have it before me, and Jesse can, but there's a paragraph in the recommendation, in the conditions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's line 149, James. If you open up the Dropbox letter, you'll see it in there.
I'm looking at
Thanks,
it now.
Paul.
Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, just a quick one on line 49. Look at the guidelines. Look at the streetscape guidelines. That's what those are. Just add the word streetscape.
Gotcha.
Next. Thanks, Joe. Dolores?
So a couple things, David, like Jay said, from a purist standpoint, love the interpretation and really do agree from that on the architectural architectural considerations. However, the building is now going to have residential, and I don't think that canopies are at this point in time a function of luxury, but they happen to provide protection from elements, et cetera. And I think that considering the change of design, the canopy is appropriate. And I think that they were extremely considerate in that design. And I have to applaud them for being thoughtful instead of just putting a random design up there. They thought about how that looked and wanted to try to have that be consistent with the building. And additionally, to James's question, the change in the building is allowing for many of the materials they kept that were on the interior to be input and in the design back into the interior. So it really is a win-win, even though the interior was not designated as a landmark. There will be some elements that are maintained.
Thanks, Dolores. Dale?
Yeah, this is just to say that the issue of the canopy was raised in committee, and the majority opinion was that the canopy was within the architectural language of the original building, and that it is an adaptive reuse from office to residential. And there were plenty of us on the committee with architectural backgrounds with a deep appreciation of Raymond Hood's genius, who found that this canopy was not, a detriment to the project at hand.
Thanks, Dale. So on process, David has proposed an amendment. For us to entertain that or consider it, there needs to be a second. Is there a second on David's amendment?
I'll second it.
Okay, so that means we will have discussion on the amendment. So specifically, this is to counter the position of the letter and reject the proposed canopy in favor of the existing, I think is just a summary high level there. Any questions on this? Okay, so on process, we now have to vote on the amendment since it cannot be taken up at the end. And Paul?
Sorry, as co-chair of the committee, I just want to echo the statements that were made by other members of the committee present, that this debate did occur at committee and committee voted out in favor of the canopy. So I just want to reinforce that position for all members to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Leslie, on the motion, please.
Yeah, I just want to, what Paul just said, I just want to know what the, was it a unanimous committee vote or what was the committee vote? I'm sorry.
It was unanimous. It was
Okay,
unanimous. And I have to say, although David, I'm with you on the importance of this building and the beauty of this building. The canopy is rather not monumental in the least. So I think the committee should know that.
So I'd like to, I think it's pretty cut and dry what's being proposed and what came out of committee. So with that, Jesse, I think I'm gonna ask for a show of hands.
Yes.
Folks using the raise hand function. This way
Yes.
the vote is also recorded and acknowledged accordingly. So
Do you want our cameras on this time,
I'm
Jeff?
gonna, we'll use the raised hand function. So yes, please on that. So I'm gonna do as I've done on the minutes and the agenda. I'm gonna call this, well, no, actually. A yes vote would indicate that you want to require the original awning to stay in place. David has made the motion to hold on, I see heads shaking, but I'm framing something here. David's amendment proposes, as I understand it, to strike the committee's recommendation that the new awning be accepted and instead ensure the original awning is in place. So David's amendment, you're voting on a yes to reverse the committee's decision on the awning. JD.
Just a clarification, Jeffrey, there was no awning previously. They want to add a little band, which they're calling, they want to add something.
So the entry, okay, gotcha. Any other questions on how that's framed? Joe?
Yeah, I think this will be cleaner, Jeffrey. If we're in favor of the amendment.
I know, yes, I agree. I just usually call the vote in reverse. But I have to not call it that way this time because the yes vote would reverse the committee's decision.
So a yes means a no then in this case.
I'm sorry?
A vote. a yes means a no against the proposal.
That's even more confusing.
That's why I'm saying.
Joe, if you could allow me to explain it as I'm going to continue to do. A yes vote supports the David's amendment, which reverses the committee's current decision.
Yes.
Jeffrey, I don't accept the amendment.
Right, but it's been made and seconded, and so now we have to vote on it.
Okay.
Because I agree with you, JD, just on principle, like typically you'd be allowed to accept an amendment as friendly, and then we wouldn't have to take a vote. This amendment, I think, is considered hostile. And so accordingly, we had to take a second. This is the language, this is parliamentary language that I'm using here, folks. I see the chuckles, but I'm gonna entertain it. And so again, a yes vote is in favor of the amendment, which would reverse the recommendation of the committee as it stands. So, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I have 6. Jesse, if we could take those hands down.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, all opposed to the amendment, please use the raise hand function. That's, let's see.
I have 37.
Yep, agree. 37 opposed. Jesse, if we could put those hands down.
There we go. Up. Okay.
And now any abstentions? 1 abstention. And Leslie, if you could drop that hand. Thank you. Any present not eligible? Thank you, everybody. On process, I really appreciate this. The motion fails with 37 opposed and 12 in favor with 1 abstention. Thank you, JD, for that, and to the committee for the discussion and this evening's process. Again, I appreciate it. Up next, Christine and Dale, transportation planning.
Yes, hello, everyone. Transpo has 4 letters. Let me pull them up. The first one is to the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. They're closing a tunnel, one of the tunnels at the Lincoln Tunnel. So this letter requests mitigation efforts to minimize the traffic impacts in our district. Sorry, the next letter is to the DOT about their curbside car sharing proposal with some comments and suggestions. 17 is a request to DOT to extend the successful extension of the 9th Avenue sidewalk. And 18 is to the MTA to repair damaged grates that I'm sure we are all familiar with, and we provided a list of damaged grates in the district. So if we could bundle those, that would be great.
Thanks, Dale. A couple of questions. Hector, please just identify the letter you want to ask a question about too.
Yeah, item 15.
Okay.
I don't know, Dale, I think unintentionally, she said the Lincoln Tunnel. Isn't it actually the Holland Tunnel that's having it closed?
Oh, that was my flub. It's the Holland Tunnel that's closing, but it is going to have traffic impacts on our district. Yes. Thanks, Hector.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hector. Dolores?
So this is on letter 16. A little confused. The rideshare program, this is similar to like a Zip car, et cetera. When they're coming into markets, they have to do their studies for demand and to understand the feasibility of moving into a new market. So they probably recognize that there was a need. So we have lines 28 through, we'll call it 29, where I'm very confused why it's in there. We say the program did not seem tailored to our district, which has a low rate of car ownership. the whole purpose of their program is to accommodate those that don't own cars, and that perhaps are the folks that are using rideshare services but don't want to do that. I mean, if we think about it, Lyft, Uber, et cetera, those are the things that are driving the traffic issues within the Midtown area, not folks owning cars. So I'm confused why the line is in there to talk about car ownership, which is they're targeting people who don't own cars.
That's because the present, this is a company that's partnering with DOT, and they're getting a fairly favorable rate on parking spaces curbside. So they presented something, their presentation keynoted the public good that their car sharing program would provide. And one of those public goods that they purported to be providing via their service in Manhattan was that it would decrease the rate of car ownership. And in other markets, they have some studies to that end, that having the availability of a car share meant that certain individuals, certain users declined to purchase a car for themselves. So we had a hard time understanding how that would translate to a district which already has a relatively low rate of car ownership.
Okay, it's just not clear in the letter.
Yeah, we can clarify it so that
that would be
ties
helpful
back to their bullet
presentation.
point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dolores. Leslie?
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thank you, Dale. I was going to mention the same thing. I didn't understand that because this is put to people who don't have cars, and you say it kind of contradictory. But I want to thank you guys for mentioning the SUV line and the electric vehicle line. I wish it could be stronger. I do have two questions, or maybe one now. What does offsite charging mean?
In other words, not charging at the curbside locations where they would have we could clarify that. We don't want to endorse any sites that may or may not become get around curbside locations and say we're automatically bestowing our approval for an EV charging area.
No, of course not.
Yeah,
we wouldn't want that. It just says offsite charging. It just seriously, it's vague, and I don't know where they plan. Do they plan to have EV? Did they in the presentation? Did they plan?
No,
to have
but
EV vehicles?
but again, part of their presentation was that one of their public benefits was the environmental impacts of car sharing. So we said, if you really want to have an environmental impact as a company, you should look to the EV model.
Yeah. That was my second point, actually. Is there any positive aspects that came from this meeting, or because the one good thing, or many good things from car shares, it's that it lowers Ubers, it lowers Lyfts, it lowers those type of cars that just drive around, clogging streets, and I didn't see any note of that. I don't know if that was in the presentation.
They didn't present specifically that point, that availability of car sharing reduces need for or shared a car like this versus a car share versus ride share. They didn't make that specific point. So it wasn't really discussed in committee. But
we could add a sentence about that. I mean, that's not something we thought about, and that's not something they were talking about. So that's
it somewhat goes
add
to
a
the
sentence
point,
to that.
Yeah, we could. It somewhat goes to the point that the presentation was not really tailored to our district, because they were talking about equity, they were talking about connectivity, they were talking about environmental impacts, they were talking about car ownership stats, but the locations that they came up with the DOT don't really address those public benefits, or don't provide those public benefits in the way they seem to think they would. They're not especially connective. They're not especially serving underserved communities. They're not especially, they're not going to have such an impact on car ownership. So we can tighten up the language and clarify the language that it's specifically responding to their presentation points.
Or even, I mean, I don't know if we have to, do we have to just specifically respond to their presentation points? I mean, we can definitely mention that, that this would be a positive movement as far as.
Yeah, no, we can include that also.
I'm sorry, I'm skipping ride share. I'm getting confused, ride share and car share, ride share.
Right.
As opposed to car share.
We can bring up the car share versus ride share bullet point and say, you know, for instance, something that wasn't addressed in your presentation is, you know, this potential benefit.
So this is good. It's a friendly.
Yeah, that would be great. Then I would support this letter. I think I appreciate it. I do appreciate that you guys mentioned, again, I'll say the EV aspect of it. And if you could just, when it says with offsite charging, it's just so like, where is offsite charging? I don't even know if we should mention that, only because we haven't discussed that. I know that's a big hot topic, or at least
we'll clarify that.
Yeah, we can make the language a little clear on both those points. The points that you brought up and the points that Dolores brought up.
All right. Thank you so much, Dale and Christine.
Yep. Thanks, Leslie. Marty? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is also about language clarity on letter 15. On line 18, you say certain hours and days to the schedule of additional lanes in the tunnel. I think that should be clarified. Additional lanes in the tunnel is what the Gateway project is doing for the rail lines. You might want to say additional hours and days to the schedule of additional westward lanes in the lanes going westward, or whatever the meaning is there.
That is the meaning, and we can definitely add that.
Well, we'll add that. Right.
Thank you.
It's confusing like hell.
Thanks, Marty. Hector, that was your hand from earlier, right? It's okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Dale, Christine, thank you. And thank you everybody for the questions. Up next, Chelsea Land Use, Jessica and Carrie.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have 3 letters. You can see here, I think they're pretty clear. So we would propose bundling them, though obviously if there are any questions, just for high level review. The first is the installation of a canopy going from 413 all the way down to 435 on West 14th Street. Carrie authored that letter, so if there are any questions, we'll direct them to her. We then have 434, 436 West 22nd Street, which is the replacement of the front door and entranceway. Pamela wrote this letter. We want to thank her for stepping up to help with that. And then lastly, and both of those are approvals, the third is 428 West 22nd Street for vertical and rear yard horizontal extension, which is a deny unless, and the conditions are clearly outlined at the top of the letter there. We have some significant concerns about the overall extension that's happening there. Those are the letters. I see Brad's hand, and just note that I'll direct, depending on the letter that we're referencing, I'll direct questions to the authors. Brad.
Yes, I just want to bring up to the board's attention, and we talked at committee level on letter 21 about the donut hole behind our landmark townhouses and brownstones. It continually comes up that we don't want an expansion back, but I just feel it's unfair to keep putting it on these applicants when they're going by the code, the building code. And it causes a lot of contention and confusion with these applicants. And we discussed it at committee. I mean, if we want to attack this as a full board, and I don't know what Hell's Kitchen Land Use sees at their end, but it has to be a text amendment. It just seems to be unfair over and over. And then what I don't personally like is the attacks that happen to the applicants about who's moving in there. I just think it's totally inappropriate. And I just needed to say that publicly. I just think that's wrong. So I would really like our board to discuss about a text amendment. You know, that's what we learned through all our training. That's the only way to make a change. And I'm all for the donut hole and the light and air in the back and just keeping it to a T-port extension. But I just think we're it's inconsistent and confusing for the applicants. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you. And I'm going to be abstaining from that. I don't want to go against the board, but I just think it's something we have to address.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. I want to acknowledge and Carrie, I see your hand, so obviously if you want to join in, I just want to say that we feel similarly as members and chairs, Carrie and I do, and so we are going to be hosting a meeting in the coming weeks to look at all of the solutions, whether it's text amendment or perhaps there are other solutions at our disposal, to try to create some systemic approach to this so that it is not a personal attack or consideration to the applicant, but rather that we have clear guidelines and rules that we aim to follow. So we are open to suggestions. I mean, text amendment is what's been floated, but perhaps there are others, and would like to find a way to address this systematically. Carrie, your hand came down, so I'm going to assume that was good enough. Katie, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry to be so ignorant. I just don't. Can you just tell me what a donut hole is? I don't understand what the topic is. Sorry.
Yes. The donut hole. If you, someone could, there's probably a more scientific explanation, but is the area typically along the backyards as they abut, that creates a sense of essentially a park or a protected area between the blocks in which people feel a sense of access to light and air without necessarily being within a shared public space. And so we try to limit exposure or building into that space in a way that would reduce the overall experience mid-block between the buildings. I'm going to assume that was a good enough explanation. Okay. All right. I think that's those are our letters. I don't see any other hands.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Over to Joe and Maria for Housing, Health, and Human Services, please.
Hola. Thank you, Jeffrey. I think the first one is the letter for 503 West 45th Street, right?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to take that letter. The letter is to the property owner of 503 West 45th Street regarding village care. That's on 46th Street and 10th Avenue, specifically 510 West 46th Street. And it's assisted living for seniors that are on Medicaid. They have 100 residents there. In the summer of 2020, they were doing restoration on the patio deck, and the staff noticed pieces of the adjacent building's facade, 503 West 45th, and had fallen down onto their patio deck. And then over time, what ended up happening was DOB issued them a violation to Village Care for lack of safety. So basically the letter is just requesting that the property owner at the West 45th Street address immediately repair the facade so that the vacate order could be lifted and Village Care residents can use their outdoor space.
Thank you,
and
Maria.
that is it.
Yeah, just one thing to note, we're going to put links to the violations in the letter so they're easy for the readers to know where they are.
Okay.
Open data. Any questions for Maria?
Comments, suggestions, edits. Going once, going twice.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Executive Committee, I'm going to introduce but pass these over to their respective entities for introduction. Item 24 is a joint letter with CLUE and HHHS. This is regarding Chelsea Bayview, the state-owned building on far west 20th Street and the West Side Highway. Many of you know we've been talking about this for a decade. This new effort is really exciting, and I want to give huge props to the two committees. They've been talking about this since it came up in November, and we started formally talking about it in December. Discussions were had at multiple committee meetings, and the state is, frankly, I would say, fair to say, eagerly awaiting our formal letter on this matter before they go to market with the GPP. So first, back to Jessica and Carrie from a CLUE perspective regarding this new proposal.
Sorry, I don't think we were prepared to speak about this.
Perfect, then I will just summarize at a very high level because it's 9:12.
Well, I would give it to Joe, and because he was really, you know, we all obviously participated in drafting this, but Joe was the author.
Joe, short and sweet. It's like 7th time on this letter topic, I think.
I know, it's not like we haven't discussed it over and over. I think the key issue here is the state came and proposed supportive housing. The board said supportive housing, yes, we agree with that. However, we want supervised housing additionally, and we recommend in this process 30 beds of supervised housing for the persistently and chronically mentally ill homeless with a high level who are not able to succeed in supportive housing, need a much more intensive level of services. And we did a lot of research. We spoke to Dr. Van Yu, the chief medical officer for CUCS. He gave Maria and myself very specific comments on staffing patterns. And that is on the housing side and the service side. The next component of here is a community facility, and the community desperately needs to preserve the pool, the gym, the outdoor space on the roof, and the restaurant kitchen as a major community facility for Chelsea, especially to serve the residents of Fulton houses. And the last piece, of course, which has been overarching throughout the whole process, is historic preservation. And thank you, David, and thank you, Pam Wolf, for adding in very specific pieces about what's preserved, what's not to preserve. That pushed everyone to do. Pam did some serious research, and we incorporated in our letter. So it is very specific on that. Wrapping it up all together, community facility, historic preservation, affordable housing, and the supervised housing. It's a whole new idea putting it together, and it's a big hoop to jump through. And I want to thank both committees for jumping through it, and the public for really listening. And the last thing I want to note, Jeffrey, is public who came to speak about the dog run or came to speak about the closure of 22nd Street, unsolicited, spoke up in favor of this proposal. So I think we're really in a good shape with this, and I think that's going to help us a great deal.
Indeed. Thank you, Joe, and to the two committees and to everybody that worked to get this to what will be a very trailblazing development once again on the west side. David.
Yeah, I would simply like to add that we should call for replacement of terracotta in kind. There are a couple of places where the letter talks about it. One is around line 46 under the preservation heading, and the other is around line 191, 192. It's another preservation heading, and it calls for restoration of the terracotta using terracotta or other materials approved by SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm concerned that SHPO might be overridden by ESD since they're both state agencies. And I actually have a copy of the report that was done by ESD's hired consultant on the terracotta. And I'm a little concerned that that report says it describes itself as intended to propose alternate materials in lieu of terracotta, as if that was the firm's instructions. Its firm is called Superstructures. They're very good. I'm sure they were brought on because once SHPO was alerted to the removal of the terracotta, they insisted that ESD hire a special consultant. But if you go to Superstructure's website, they talk about how more and more damaged terracotta is being replaced in kind. The website boasts that virtually all of the firm's award-winning preservation projects have involved terracotta, including the Brooklyn General Post Office, where 17,000 damaged terracotta units were replaced with new terracotta.
I think this sounds friendly, right, Joe?
Yeah, I think we should clarify that no matter what, we want to see terracotta as our major preference. But I want to make sure we don't hang up the whole Bayview project on this is one item. So David, you and I can work out some stronger language. Makes perfect sense, okay?
Okay, good, great. Just since we're on the topic, I'll point out that Brad Hoylman and Tony Simone and Eric Botcher have sent a letter to ESD requesting the terracotta be replaced in kind.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Brad?
I think Brad just took his hand down. I think he's
okay. I want to give a moment and Brad, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Sorry, I meant to hit the mute button. I just want to talk about one thing to consider, and that's the laundry building, we're calling it, which is the building kind of to the left. I know we keep saying we want a modest addition there, but I think that takes away of what can be done here. I don't know why we keep saying modest. You know, in the past, we've had a lot of presentations where that site was going to go up much higher, and it could accommodate a lot more units. And I just think when we say we want 1 or 2 stories added, I think we're missing something. And as Joe's saying, we don't want to hold up the project on terracotta. I don't think we want to hold up the project on what they could max out there. I mean, that's just something that I've brought up before, and it specifically says in here only 1 or 2 stories. I just think maybe we should discuss that. I brought it up in the meeting. I want to bring it up now. I don't want to miss out on that. It's a good opportunity to get more housing, a little higher.
Jesse,
I don't know why we want to just keep it 1 or 2 stories. I don't know why, because it still keeps the building that we all want to maintain and landmark or, use. And then we've got this other building to the left that I think we could really utilize. Thank you.
Jessica, you want to take that first, and then I'll add on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we heard repeatedly concerns about the capacity of the lot and overbuilding, and want to make sure that this is consistent with what we heard would be acceptable to the community in terms of scale and scope, while also ensuring that it does not become a glass tower on top, which is something we've fought against in the past. Additionally, I think there's general concerns about a project that becomes, on the one hand, Brad, I hear you that there's opportunity there, but that becomes, unwieldy, and perhaps that the priority becomes something other than the priorities mentioned in this letter. And so I think after a lot of discussion back and forth, the commitment to a modest addition over that space would be acceptable for the reasons you're mentioning, which is that it would allow for additional units perhaps to be accommodated, but that there had to be limits as part of a compromise to ensure we get the other things we need and to make sure this project move forward. But Carrie has also been deep on this, and please, Carrie.
Carrie?
Yeah, Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the entire building, including the laundry building, which it's one building, is protected under SHPO. So it's not like there's one historic building and then another adjacent building that can become a tower without having to go through this process of I think butting up against historic preservation. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And yeah, so I think that we want to allow for that modest addition because we do want to allow for more housing as long as it's 100% affordable housing. And if we decide, hey, you can build a tower there, that we may end up in a conversation about market rate housing that we do not want to have. We're very, very much for this being 100% affordable housing, and the developer will get credits for maintaining the historic building as a whole. So that's, a benefit actually to them financially. And Joe, if I missed anything, let me know.
Yeah, so this was reached at consensus at the Chelsea Land Use Committee to come up with
not
this
just consensus. I believe it was unanimous, but
Unanimous, yes.
I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't think anyone was against it. That's what I meant by consensus. People really agreed to it. And I think the issue here is that the project has a lot of freight on it by so many various elements that the moment there's a signal that maybe a tower is a way to solve every element, there will be certain developers pushing for that. We have had the state now agreeing to, for the land, there will be zero cost for acquisition. They will put funding in from the state supportive housing program for this project. They will put funding in for support services for this project. So I think we're in a very good starting place with it. And the last piece is a good source of funding is historic preservation tax credits. Those credits are available when you preserve a building. You can get approval of a small addition, but a tower would mean that you would not be able to get approval for that particular financial vehicle. So that's why this in total, we thought it was important to keep it modest. Thanks.
But Joe, I'm not talking a tower. 1 to 2 floors, but to add 5 floors, and we fight all the time for permanent affordable housing, and everything you just said that the state's willing to give it at $1 cost. I don't know how we're not looking at, we're missing a huge opportunity here. I just don't. Because I understand everybody, and at the committee, I don't remember anyone in the public saying they were against it. We just kept saying, oh, it only can be 1 to 2 stories. But we agree to disagree.
I know, but I also would note you're talking maybe 5 stories, but the development community will look at this site adjacent to the John Nouvel building and immediately go to 20 stories. That is the nature of how development works when it's put out in the public for all kinds of developers to answer. So just be wary
But
of
Joe, that's my point. I think we're really missing out. We are missing out. We've got tall buildings right next door, and we want to make it permanently affordable. I don't know how we're not saying that. At least can we increase it to 5 or 6?
I think you're negotiating.
20 more stories.
A committee has already put its stamp on this, and that's the. I think we should agree to disagree.
Well, I could also ask for a friendly amendment to add, instead of 1 to 2 stories, can we add? Let's put in the letter up no more than 5.
I'm wondering if since we refer to stories, why don't we refer to, and this may be worse, but the FAR allowable on the site, I believe, is 7.5. And
there was a public discussion. This is
right, but so basically nothing will be accepted as friendly for what Brad is raising. Is that a correct summation?
Yeah,
Joe,
it was discussed at meeting.
Jessica, something.
But this is why we're having a board meeting.
To clarify that what Brad is proposing would not be accepted as friendly in any form.
Well, you can tell me if this is, incorrect, as I've not experienced this yet, but at our Chelsea land use meeting, we voted unanimously for the points that are in this letter. So
and then that
I feel like we would have to go back to Chelsea land use and relitigate.
Right. Yeah, that was brought to housing, and we supported the Chelsea because they acted before us. We supported their points.
Okay, thank you. So Brad, it's not accepted as friendly. So you'd have to force an amendment, which is the process we just went through with the McGraw-Hill awning.
Correct. I'd like to make an amendment to add, instead of 1 to 2 stories, no more than 5.
So is there a second?
Because I just think we're missing out on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Is there a second on Brad's motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, so now I see hands. Roberta, is your question on the motion or the letter?
It is on the motion, or it is a point of information that I think would inform
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, I think this is a correction. It's a question I'd likely address at Joe, but also anyone who's familiar with the state historic preservation tax credits. It could it be harder to obtain these tax credits with by building a larger addition in this case, and was kind of curious about that.
Yes. I give you my direct experience. We have a building called the Captain Post Building on West 52nd Street. We were able to get an approval for a very small addition in the rear of the building that was not so visible. We had proposed to go 2 stories. SHPO said, no, go 1. The Hartley House building has a proposed small addition on 1 portion. You could not add another story. Basically, a large visible addition will render you won't get approval from SHPO for the plan, and therefore you're not eligible for the historic preservation tax credits. That's how the process works.
Okay, thank you for that.
Paul, on the motion?
Yes, on the motion. Joe, at committee, we discussed how many square feet would be additional if they went to 7.5 FAR. And that if we restricted building on the main portion of the building and the C-shaped building and only had that 7.5 added on to the annex, and the amount of square feet sort of drove a lot of that conversation as to why we didn't want to go so high.
Right.
And understanding your point about the development community, when they see 7.5 FAR with no building on the original building, the whole building, I'm calling it the whole because there's a hole in the middle, and only building on the annex. That's how we got to the idea of having a 26-story tower added on top of the annex, and that was the fear. So
yeah, I was asked to do the actual calculations, of what the footprint of the annex is times the remaining FAR, and it would have rendered a 26-story building at 7.5.
Right. And so how much, and then we talked about limiting it to 1 to 2 for all the reasons you mentioned. But if it were up to 5, those 3 additional floors, how much square foot would you remember? Do you still have your calculations handy? What would that additional square footage be?
I don't have the FAR calculations in my pocket.
What?
You can keep on talking. I can try to figure that out.
But I think that just to put it in perspective as to why we agreed on a 2-story and not a 5-story,
Right.
based on even the number of units and what that would mean.
Mhm.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Christine,
No, that's fine.
thank you. David on the motion.
Well, in our discussion, we talked about a couple of stories in part because that's probably what you could add to the existing structure in light gauge steel framing. If you wanted to add 4 or 5 stories, you'd probably need to drop new steel columns down to new foundations. And it probably wouldn't be feasible in terms of the return. What would be feasible in terms of the return would be doing that, putting in a new steel structure, and then building a very tall building. So I'm afraid that, if we say 4 to 5 stories, we're kind of opening up that can of worms.
David, we're going to build it all over terracotta, though.
Ah.
No, I'm just messing with you.
Okay, you
Just
got me.
messing with you.
I'm all
I got
for it.
you. All right.
I like that.
But
That's a good one.
David's technical point is very accurate. Additions of 1 to 2 stories you do in this specific kind of material. If it's more than 2 stories, you must bring more structure through the building to carry the addition.
So we have a motion that's been seconded. I want to say that after Roberta's question, I'm unfortunately going to be voting against this motion, even though it probably doesn't surprise you all that I would have voted in favor of additional footage. But I actually think the historic tax credits and the financing of this property is critical to the success, especially since we're making demands like a pool and a gym and a whole bunch of things be preserved. So this is a unfortunate decision for me personally, and I just wanted to share that. So the motion is to add language to the letter that would allow up to no more than 5 stories of new addition on the, I guess, annex of the building, the eastern side. Everyone in favor of that, please raise your hand. Voting in favor would add language to the letter that would support up to 5 stories being added to the roof. 2 in favor. If we could drop those hands.
I concur.
All opposed and keeping the letter as is written. I have 40. Hang on. Oh God, did the hands are people putting their hands down, all of us? 30. So everybody, please, sorry, the numbers are jumping. Everybody in favor, everybody opposed. 40 opposed, 2 in favor. Okay, hands down, please.
You didn't see Simon Says.
Hold on.
Mike, no.
Jesse, can you do the hand down, please, on Mike? Any abstentions? Any present not eligible? So the motion fails with 2 in favor and 37 against. Brad, thank you for raising that. I appreciate you doing so because with Roberta's further line of inquiry, I think that helped inform us even more on the complicated nature of this. So I thank you for sticking to that. I'm excited that we're soon going to put Bayview to bed and vote on this letter in a couple more items. Next up, the Cannabis Working Group. Over to Jesse Greenwald, who's presenting to us on some jet lag, and I appreciate his patience this evening for item 25. Jesse G.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Just before I speak, and I will try to make this brief, I recognize cannabis is a hot topic right now. I realize that there are a lot of things that are happening There are a lot of things that are not happening that we want to happen. This letter is not about all of that. This letter is specifically, and first of all, I'll say the working group is still going forward, gathering information, meeting with stakeholders. Hopefully we'll be meeting with the sheriff's office shortly, and putting together potentially some forum to pass along all the information that we've learned. This letter is specifically about the proposed regulations put forward by the Office of Cannabis Management on adult use dispensaries and on-site consumption lounges. There's an official comment period for any proposed regulations, 60 days long. We, like any community member, like any state citizen, are putting forward our comments. And that is what this letter is. Just some brief background. As you may recall, Governor Cuomo dragged his feet in appointing members of the Office of Cannabis Management before his resignation. So it took a long time for OCM to get staffed, and it's still fully getting there, and to start drafting regulations. This delay is also one of the main reasons why there has been such an explosion of illicit dispensaries and smoke shops illegally selling cannabis, an issue we addressed in a letter, and actually we were sort of the first to do so back in July. Since then, OCM has hired a number of enforcement officers who have been working in conjunction with the sheriff's office to begin raiding these businesses and seizing illegal cannabis. Likewise, a few months ago, Dashida Dawson has been appointed by the mayor as New York City's own cannabis czar. She is working both on enforcement issues and on aiding licensees in putting together their applications. That's just some background. OCM has finalized its regulations for conditional dispensaries. Those are for the nonprofits and justice involved in businesses before our working group even got going. So as you know, the first conditional licenses have already begun to be issued in New York. And a few weeks ago, New York City's first legal dispensary opened in the East Village. It's being run by the nonprofit Housing Works. OCM released its regulations, the ones that we are now commenting on, for adult use dispensaries and on-site consumption lounges on December 14th, giving us 60 days to comment. The working group reviewed the regulations in their entirety. Much of them were not very pertinent to our work and did not raise concerns, such as regulations on the cultivation or manufacturing requirements, which we kind of need more technical detail or knowledge to know about anyway. Our main concerns and comments reflected in the letter fall into two categories: notice to the community boards, and the ability of community boards to get licensees to stipulate to our proposals, basically in line with how it works in terms of the state liquor authority and businesses applying for liquor licenses. On the notice front, the regulations are very confusingly drafted and only say that community boards defined as municipalities, but we get into that in the letter. We try to clean that language up. Community boards have 30 days within receipt of notice to submit opinions, but the letter that we are writing comments that we should get at least 30 to align with other requests that other community boards have already put in 60 days before licenses submit their applications to the Cannabis Control Board for us to review. The regs also only require that applicants give us very basic information, like the name and the location of the business. The letter requests that the community board have access to other information that applicants will be required to deliver to the Cannabis Control Board, so we know what the heck what their actual proposals are, including a security plan, community impact plan, and delivery plan. By the way, some of those, like the delivery plan, are like not even defined terms in the regulations. They don't really describe what a delivery plan should look like. So we're just asking, whatever it ends up looking like, we'd like to see it. Same with the community impact plan, which is more about how an applicant's proposal for how a dispensary will improve the community that's being placed into. And I think that would be helpful for us to see as well. On allowing community boards to demand stipulations, the regulations allow municipalities, or in New York City, as we say, in New York City, meaning community boards, to pass reasonable restrictions on things like noise and odor. We are asking for stronger language, explicitly allowing community boards to restrict outdoor spaces, including demanding that outdoor spaces are enclosed if necessary. And I'll say New Jersey, as a state, requires this automatically for all on-site consumption lounges. It's not even up to discretion of local communities. That's just banned. Christine also suggested an amendment yesterday, which I accepted as friendly, stating that the regulations should allow community boards to completely prohibit on-site consumption lounges, to allow said consumption on sidewalks. Sidewalk consumption of cannabis outside of a lounge should not be allowed. The regs also require that applicants deliver a delivery service plan, as mentioned, not really defined, but a delivery service plan nonetheless. There's no Our letter captures the fact that there's no real detail about it, and then recommends that the regulations allow community boards to comment on the delivery service plan to make sure that the cannabis deliverers can be made safer and that delivery workers are protected. Finally, knowing that cannabis applicants will have different backgrounds than those that may have different backgrounds than those that our community board is familiar with in the liquor context, we ask that the regulations more explicitly spell out requirements for anti-bias training on those for community board members or anyone else in the municipalities who might be reviewing these applications, and to assist applicants with their own community outreach training so that they know the process of sort of reaching out to us and reaching out to the different stakeholders like block associations, which they might not be familiar with. And with that, that is the letter. Happy to take questions. I know that was a lot in a short amount of time.
Well, the committee has done a lot, and this is the culmination of that. And so thank you for the detailed summary. Christopher.
Thank you so much for the detailed summary. Appreciate the task force's time sitting down to think about this in such detail. I have maybe 2 or 3 things. I'll start with the first one with delivery. You missed it there, but I think that when it comes to delivery plan, that any delivery plans being considered by the state should be that a distributor should only be distributing cannabis or CBD products. No other products should be delivered from those locations. You know, food, snacks, smoking paraphernalia, etc. That's like, you know, it should be strictly focused on the product that they're permitted to sell. 2, page 3, line 38, there was a recommendation for a request on the zip codes deemed communities disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition. I think this is going to be the first time Rage Against the Machine is going to be quoted at Manhattan Community Board 4. But when it comes to the war on drugs and its weaponization against minorities, the front line is everywhere. I don't understand the purpose of this. If an individual is a part of that group, is this the request of the community board to see whether or not an individual should be only opening in those zip codes? Is this a reason to provide a deny unless or deny letter? That's my first question. And then my second one falls under the protection of permits for the social equity component of this. Are we going to ask for any, like, let's say a permit comes forward to the community board as part of a citing request, the community board should be protecting the value of that permit for the registrant, the person looking to be cited for a shop or a consumption shop within CB4. Should we not be requesting the state, or should we, within these within this language, that any citing should like ensure that the state closes down all illegal distribution and consumption sites around the area of the requested site for, or rather being applied for. You know what I mean? Like I see a lot of things that say, no, you can't, or we would prefer you don't, or we hope that you would come to give us. But like, I see nothing from the task force saying like, we're also looking to protect applicants and the value of their permits. And so we should be asking the state to ensure that we're protecting them as well.
Sure. So I'll take those in reverse if I can. I'll do it quickly.
Yeah.
So on the third, I think our first letter sort of addressed that fact, and enforcement being, we want to see stronger enforcement specifically because we are trying to protect what is supposed to be a thoughtful, well-regulated cannabis industry in our area. I don't think necessarily the proper place for that kind of language is in these regulations. While it's a good enforcement idea potentially, I don't necessarily think it belongs in these regulations. 2, in terms of the zip code, so basically applicants can apply 50% of all licenses. There's a goal of 50% of all licenses going to applicants defined as social and economic equity applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the analysis of whether they are a social and economic equity applicant would be if they're from certain zip codes. So it would just be help in our assessment of those applicants to be able to know and recognize that, yes, they are from a zip code that has been identified as having been negatively impacted by the illegal enforcement of the cannabis laws.
But that language also includes ethnicities and gender, right? So it's not just like solely pointed to zip codes, it's also ethnicities.
Yes. So,
okay. So like I'm Hispanic, and if I were to apply, but 10036 does not fall within the impacted zip codes, I'm still I could still apply because I'm Hispanic, I'm Puerto Rican American.
Sure.
Right. So like I don't understand what's the point of requesting those zip codes if a minority is requesting a permit. What purpose does having those zip codes serve?
Again, it would just help in our assessment of knowing potentially. I mean, it's just literally just more information for us. I think the regulations already state to the fact, exactly as you say, it can be for minority-owned businesses, like all these various factors. But it's just a matter of we won't know if this is going in the order that we were proposing it go, meaning that the applicants will come to us before the final package is submitted to the Cannabis Control Board. Then it would be helpful for us to know if we know nothing else about the applicant and they're applying as a social and economic equity applicant. We could see, oh, but they are from the zip code. That maybe is why they're applying under this rubric. I don't think it's the most.
I don't come across it as Hispanic though. So if I was to present to Manhattan Community Board 4, one, I would have to provide context to my ethnicity to the board because my zip code doesn't fall within that rubrics. So I just don't understand the need for any additional information. I am Hispanic, therefore I fall under that. Chris Weber is Black. He just opened up his shop in Greenwich Village and he opened that up with minority stakeholders. He is definitely a part of, the socially impacted in this war on drugs and the prohibition against cannabis. So once again, adding zip codes to our rubrics of decision making, it's kind of it's a bit ironic in so much as that we're also asking for implicit bias training to be included, because I think that is a bias.
So Chris, if I may, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that we strike something from the letter? Are you suggesting that there's a sentence that we should add to the letter?
If we can strike the request for zip codes, because I think it just falls a little deaf. It's a little insensitive.
Sure. I'm happy to. I mean, first of all, I imagine that this is going to be a list that's published regardless, because the state is actively trying to identify the zip codes that they are considering as having been previously impacted by the enforcement of the former cannabis laws.
Yeah,
but
let's just look
if it reads insensitive,
the Zoom boxes right here right now.
If it doesn't read like that, and if it reads insensitive, I'm happy to strike it, because I also don't think it is the most important part of this letter. And so, I mean, unless others strongly disagree, I would accept that as a friendly amendment to just strike it. I'm not going to fight you on this one.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that.
I don't think it's worth it. But
thank you, Chris.
And the first point I have, the delivery plan, no other products should be delivered. I would also accept that as friendly. I need to go back and, it's the kind of thing of, I need to check the regulations. That might be something that's already in there. Probably isn't, you're right, because they've put so little information on that specific point.
I don't think it
was in there. I will not include that in the letter. If it is not in there, I am happy to add that to the regulations, because that is a good point. It should not be cannabis plus. It should be just delivering the products that are being sold within their stores. That makes sense to me.
Thank you very much.
Josephine?
Hi, can you tell me if the Office of Cannabis Management has regulations on how close a dispensary / lounge can be to a school or another dispensary, just to avoid oversaturation? And if so, or even if not, would you consider adding something in this letter? I did notice that there is language in there about sensitivity to understanding the concerns of local communities, but I think when it comes to schools, it's something a lot bigger than that. We have a huge issue with drugs in our schools, so just a question.
So they are already control Fing right now, but I know that already, as part of the regulations, you cannot put a dispensary within, I believe, 500 feet of what is a school ground. We thought that was sufficient. If the board thinks that's insufficient and wants to make that language stronger, I'm happy to hear. But there are already regs regarding school grounds and oversaturation, I believe so.
It's like 1,000. I think it's 1,000 feet
From school grounds?
From another.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again,
what we
there
heard
are
of it
hundreds of
exactly.
pages of regs, so getting all the details is hard.
And just to get a little specific, the 500 feet is measured in the same way the State Liquor Authority measures for liquor licenses. You have to be actually on the same street. So it's not as the crow flies. You could be around the corner, but 500 feet and on the same street, which again, I think is taken from the state liquor laws. The 1,000 feet is a circumference. So that is sort of going around the whole location. So there is a difference in the way those two things are measured in the existing regs.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
but wasn't Josephine asking to add that language in the letter so that we're acknowledging that? Sorry, Josephine.
Right, yes, absolutely.
You mean it's just supporting it? Because it's already in the regs.
Well, if it's already in the regulations, I mean, yes, I think that it should be definitely a part of the letter, just so we keep an eye on it. I'm honestly not sure whether, I mean, there's some mention in the letter about the smell and all of that. So I'm not really sure if, how many feet is really sufficient. I have not gone into all of that detail, but I'm guessing that I would hope that 500 feet would be enough. But I feel that, I would be, in support of this letter if it had that kind of language in it. The community, sensitivity to community just isn't enough, especially when we're dealing with schools.
I think, Jesse, would it be appropriate then to say we are we appreciative, or within the same framework of community sensitivity, and are appreciative of the fact that regulations already include the 500-foot limitation and the 1,000-foot. However, perhaps we just reuse the language as they have in the existing reg, and we just sort of list it in our letter.
That we're
Josephine, does that
supportive
sound
of it,
appropriate?
right, Jeffrey?
I'm sorry?
That we are supportive of that language.
Yes, exactly. That we are aware of community sensitivity, and that we support the fact that the regs already specifically outline a 500-foot and 1,000-foot stipulation.
Great, no problem.
And are we going to say legal establishment? So this should be at 1,000, measured from another legal establishment, because there are so many legal ones, right?
It's a defined term in the regulation, Christine.
Okay,
so
got
it would only mean a legal dispensary.
Right. Brad? Thank you, Josephine. Brad?
Well, for a cannabis working group, a lot got done, I have to say. It's pretty amazing. I got one question. Will these be rated like you go to a restaurant, like A, B, C, D? Is that part of what we could say? Like, I don't know. Now, I'm talking about, sanitation and that kind of thing that they do now. So just like the bars have to in the restaurants, there's a thing in the door that says, they're up to code and they're being inspected.
So no, there's not that, but they do have pretty stringent requirements about how it needs to be grown, how it needs to be maintained, how it needs to be packaged, how it needs to be labeled, and including a specific sign on the door saying that this is a legal dispensary. I've seen the proposed mock-up of what that required sign will look like, and I think it includes a QR code too, so that people can confirm that it is legal and signed off on, and it's not just another illegal dispensary masquerading as a legal dispensary. But to that specific question, no, the regulations don't, and I probably would not accept that as friendly, only because I think that that's just asking for a whole other regulatory regime that is just going to cost money for I'm not sure to what end. I think if you are licensed, if you are able to get a license from the Cannabis Control Board, I believe you know, that you are assumed to be operating with high standards, and obviously there is a set limited time to have the license, and you need to get it renewed, and so those issues would come up.
Yeah, but Jesse, what I'm saying is it's a lounge, and in a lounge, they're not just going to serve marijuana that you smoke. I'm saying if they have coffee or tea or biscuits and donuts, it's almost like a lounge restaurant, like you're drinking. Now you're smoking, and in those, every one of those has to be inspected by the health department, and it's got a rating in the. That's what I'm getting at.
Jesse Bodine was about to say something. Jesse,
Yeah,
B.
I mean, I think we're kind of conflating a lot of different things here. I think Brad's bringing up a point, but I think the Department of Health would have their own regime of inspecting anything that would be serving food, and that would be covered by the Department of Health, which currently covers all sorts of different food establishments. And obviously, if it involved with anything involving the license of the dispensary or the consumption, that obviously would trigger enforcement from the state, and and maybe consumer affairs. So there's already things in place like that. I just don't think it doesn't fit with the regulations that what Jesse is. And what the document that we're putting together is there already are those things in place. So if they are serving food, they are going to be inspected every year or twice a year by the Department of Health. And if you went in there and saw something that you didn't like from a health perspective, you could call 311 and then inspectors would go out. So that would happen.
Eddie?
Jesse, thank you for the working group's efforts. Quite a detailed effort. I think you may have answered the question I wanted to ask. If I'm walking along the sidewalk, and there are a lot of these places in the Chelsea area, I wanted to buy something, a product, I should be looking for a sign on the door which says, this has been permitted and blah, 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 something like that.
Yeah, I'll try, I'm happy to send around to the board what the current mock-up looks like, but it is something quite obvious to signify and indicate that this is a legal dispensary. The Office of Cannabis Management a few months ago didn't think of this before, like when we were talking about this over the summer, they didn't think about this, but they have wised up to the fact that they really need signage on the doors indicating what is legal and what is not, and it will be clear. It will be.
Yeah, that would be very good, because if we knew what the sign should look like, because I could imagine some stores making sort of a fake sign.
Oh, exactly. That's why I think the current proposal has a QR code so that you could scan it and confirm.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Betty. Gwen?
Just wanted to say that if you guys are really concerned about how far away you can smell it, it's going to depend on the wind. It's never going to be the same.
It was tough for me to sort of write that part, because I agree. And I think that's sort of why I wanted to make sure that the regulations gave not just really community boards, but municipalities in general, a power of time, place, and manner restrictions here to, address that if things really get out of hand, and to not have to rewrite the law or rewrite the regulations and just say, you know what, this is not working. Everything needs to be enclosed. But I don't think we're coming out of the gate swinging like that. I think we're just saying, let's make sure the municipalities, either the New York City itself or the community boards, are able to get that stipulated too.
Can we call to question? Is that still
Dolores,
available?
if you'll hold on for 1 second, and I appreciate that, but part of the reason I'm going to exhaust the hand list is because we're also going to have to establish a committee or add the docket of these licenses to the review to an existing committee. So I appreciate the request, but I also want to acknowledge the hands that have been raised in the public. This is the business portion of the meeting. We only take questions from members of the board at this time. James, to the point, please.
As always, Jeffrey. Very brief question. I just want to get clarification whether or not Jesse accepted as a friendly amendment Chris LeBron's request that deliveries only be for product, and if so, why? Because it seems that if they're an operating business and they're licensed, that they should be able to deliver whatever products they carry. I was just trying to.
Meaning, I guess what you're suggesting is that it would be superfluous because the only products they would carry would be cannabis products. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying if they're carrying donuts, they should also be allowed to deliver donuts?
Yeah.
Because the latter, I think the latter is they're not allowed to carry donuts. They're only allowed to carry very specific items. If those donuts were infused with cannabis, they might be allowed to have those. But I don't think the idea here. It actually might be superfluous now that I think about it, because each dispensary is only allowed a maximum of 25 employees. Included in that are the delivery workers, and so they're not allowed to, as the regulations are written, I don't believe they're actually allowed to go to a vendor to have the deliveries made. So presumably anything that they are delivering would be something that they can sell, that they would be allowed to sell in store. But if just to firm that up, adding 4 words about that is not a big deal to me. But on your point, if you want them, I see what you're saying. You're like, oh, I deliver my weed and my donuts because those two should go to.
Just for clarification, not donuts, just whatever they're allowed to sell. Like
Sure.
they should be allowed to deliver.
I think that's there. I think that's as the regulations are written. I think that's how they are written. But if we just wanted to say and nothing else, I'm happy to add that too. Great.
Dale, with the final question, please.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So Jesse, just so we're all clear on this, not one of the stores that have popped up in CB4 is a licensed dispensary. Is that correct?
That is accurate. I will let you all know. I mean, we received our first notification of what we thought was a legal dispensary a few weeks ago, only to realize that no, indeed, I'm opening up a can of worms by saying this, but basically, because these regulations haven't been finalized yet, the only licenses that are being issued right now are conditional licenses. Again, those are for justice-involved individuals or for nonprofits. None have applied yet to our area. We are on the lookout for our first. We are excited to see our first. I will let everyone know when we get our first so that we can comment on it. But no, everything right now that you see, every single store is illegal, operating illegally, and has been an issue for the last 6 months. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Dale, and Mr. Greenwald, and to the working group. Thank you all very, very much. I'm resisting making a joke on the previous topic. Leslie, to you for the final item this evening on the budget, please.
I don't even know how I was connected to that. I don't even know what you were going to say.
No, I was going to make a weed joke, but it was not.
I know.
I decided not to.
Listen, I get it. This is the last topic here. Do we all want to go line by line over the budget? No, I'm just kidding. So this is, hold on, just to give a little overview, it'll be real quick. Everyone I think knows, but just in case, every year we have the opportunity to provide comment on what we think are budget priorities directly affecting our district. So the mayor just recently came out with his proposed budget. And he also, the city also responded to our budget request for the fiscal year 24. So this, as I said in the public hearing, the letter that you see in the Dropbox is the response to their response to our asks. Just so you know, you know what, before I go, I do want to say though, that this year was a particularly tight timeline for the response. So I am very thankful to the task force for meeting so quickly and responding to the draft. Alan, Dolores, Jessica, Christine, and Roberta specifically for thoughtful notes and edits on this. It's a huge document, so thank you. And Jessica, I know you're at work. I'm promising I'm going quick so you can get home. So just so you know, there were updates to statistics. So the stuff, what you see in the Dropbox, there are edits to it. There are some edits in language. It's not reflected in the copy you see now, but most of these were edits that were made by committees crafting the response to their particular asks. There were some education changes that will be reflected. some housing updates. Maria, Joe, please get back to me. And a few others. Anyway, you know what? I was going to go over the asks and what happened with our responses. I don't know if everyone wants me to do that at this.
I would
hour.
recommend that people read them. It's very
Thank
straightforward.
you.
And Leslie and the committee did as always, a bang up job. It's why we get what we do and why we keep fighting for what we don't get.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that exit out. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer on the budget response.
Any questions on the budget? Phase 1, and a very early one at that. This is pretty much record-breaking early delivery of the budget.
And it was a very quick turnaround. Thank you, Jesse Bodine, for helping with that too.
All right, Leslie, thank you very much for that and to all the committees. And now to the next portion of our meeting, voting.
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, you just want to correct yourself on the.
Yes, I do want to correct myself. I miscalled the vote on the McGraw-Hill letter. The proper number was 37 opposed, 6 in favor, 1 abstaining. I misstated the in favor number, and I just wanted to correct that for the record because it'll be reflected in our letter as well. Sorry about that, folks. So on the letter Jesse sent earlier today, your vote sheet, point 1, we have no ULERPs this evening. And if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a single vote on all items together. There's no need to separate anything out for our co-secretaries, Katie and Roberta. Any questions on the vote?
Yeah, Jeffrey, how do we pick the choices on 13 and 23?
Exactly. So I didn't open my vote sheet yet. Jesse, do we have options on those?
There yes, there's you don't have to worry about any of them because we will on the back end we will fix it because that's with the agenda. I'm sorry, the agenda has been amended, so don't worry about it. So you really don't need to worry about it. But there are options for withdrawn, tabled, and back to committee. So,
well, just leave it blank then.
If you choose to, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we're required to vote on each one, though. That's the problem. Yeah. So item 7 was withdrawn. Item 13, that could be referred back to the committee. It's been postponed, so I think that's the same thing. And item 23, also referred back to committee. So those are the stipulations. You don't have to say that in your vote call, but you can reflect that in your vote sheet. Thank you, Mike. Without further ado, Katie and Roberta, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I'm going to read out the names this evening, and Roberta is recording them. So, Ted, you always get to start us off.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Roberta.
Yes to all.
Christine.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Gwen.
Yes to all.
Leslie Bogosian Murphy.
Yes to all.
Farron.
Yes to all.
Jessica.
Yes to all.
Dale.
Yes to all and a dozen donuts, please.
Aurora.
Yes to all, a dozen donuts only if they have something special inside, and I sent my sheep in.
Wow, good for you. Marty.
No on 14, yes to everything else.
Got it. Paul.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Pete Diaz.
Yes, and submitted to all.
Nice. Tina.
Yes to all, no on 14.
No on 14 as well. Okay. Wendy.
Wendy's not, I'm sorry, she
Not here
emailed
tonight,
me.
I don't think.
No,
Okay,
she's not
sorry.
making-
All right, got it.
All right.
Matt Green,
E&E on 10 and yes to the rest.
got it. Jesse.
Yes to all. Thank you.
Candace.
Yes to all submitted.
Nice. David Haluka.
No to 14, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Frank.
Yes to all.
Josephine.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Yadira. Yadira.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can now. Yep.
Yes to all submitted. Sorry, my headset.
No worries. Thank you. Peggy.
Peggy's not here.
No,
Thank you.
you know, she.
And Carrie, you're
You
next.
never know what she-
Yeah, yes to all. Happy birthday, Carl.
Thanks, Carrie. Is Lowell here?
He's not.
All right. Blake.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Bert.
He is not here.
Right. Sorry about that. Chris.
Happy birthday, Carl. No on 14, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Betty.
Yes to all.
Sarah.
She's not here.
Not here.
Tina Nelson.
Not here.
Okay. Mike Noble.
Yes to all and submitted.
Thank you. JD.
Yes to all.
Great. Maria.
Yes to all and submitted.
Thank you. Alan.
Yes to all.
Brad.
Abstain on 21, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Joe.
Yes to all and submitted.
Sabrina.
I am present, not eligible on 12 and 26, and yes to the rest.
Great. Dolores.
Shortest month of the year, longest meeting of the year. And happy Black History Month, everybody. Present, not eligible on 10, and yes to the rest.
Great. David Solnick.
Yes to all.
Thank you. And then I call on myself. Yes to all. And then Charlie.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Kit.
Yes to all.
Thanks. Hector.
Yes to all and submitted.
Renal.
Yes to all submitted.
Thank you. James.
Happy birthday, Carl. Happy Black History Month. Fight the power. No to 14. Yes to the rest.
Got it.
And
David
submitted.
Warren.
Yay to all and submitted.
Leslie Williams.
Not here.
Is our birthday guy still on here? Carl?
So apparently his computer just died. He just texted me.
Well, hopefully he's off celebrating then. And last but not least, Alice.
Yes to all.
Marvelous. And then Jeffrey, can you take us out?
I can. I am present.
Excuse me, sorry. I need to correct my vote. I said yes to all, but I meant no to 14.
All right, hold on. Got it. All right, thanks. Okay, and I'm sorry, Jeffrey, what were you saying?
Sure. Present, not eligible on 19. And yes to the rest.
Okay.
Pay attention to committee agendas this month, folks. And as always, every month, what Dolores said, happy Black History Month, and a whole lot more. Thank you all. It's 10:12. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All right, everybody.